local government center at Montana State University. Our center's been around for 40 years. It's our 40th anniversary this year, and our mission or our purpose is to work with local governments across the state of Montana, help them be more effective and efficient in delivery of services. And we do that through technical assistance, research, and training. So part of our mission then is to go around the state, work with cities and counties and special districts. And primarily what we've been doing is spending a lot of our energies trying to just cover the basic governance responsibilities that all public boards have. That seems to be important. And as people cycle on and off boards, what we find is that individuals that say, I would like to be on that particular board because I would like to add value to whatever their purpose is. So they find out when they get on the board, it's like, oh, there's a whole lot of other stuff going on here, and all my energy is spent doing all this other stuff. And oftentimes it gets conflicted and contentious. And it's like, I didn't sign up to volunteer my energy to fight with a bunch of people about process and noticing meetings and all that stuff. So our hope is that we can provide you some structure and guidance on that aspect of your board service so that your time is dedicated to the impact, having impact and doing the thing that you want to do on there. Okay, so that's who I am. That's what I'm here to do. And I think what would be helpful for me is if I were to get a sense of who, not necessarily too many people that do introductions, but I would be interested in what boards you're serving on. I say boards because some of you may be serving on multiple boards because that's how we roll in Montana. So anyway, what boards are you serving on right now? Urban Transportation District, okay. Aging Services. Tax, that's always the fun one. Yeah. Tax, great.
Open Space Advisory Committee.
Open Space.
Museum.
Museum. Elections.
Community council.
Community councils. How many community councils do we have? So
There are
you online. So where are you coming from?
West Valley or Frenchtown.
Okay, and then East Missoula. Anybody? Any others?
From Sealy, like.
Online? Yeah.
Fire district.
Fire districts. Oh, love the. We'll pick on fire districts later, but that'll be a lot. I'm glad you're here.
Water.
Oh, water district. Great. I didn't hear that. Wonderful. That sounds like a good diverse group, and I'm glad you're here. Hopefully we'll be able to cover material that will be interesting to you. Again, handouts if you didn't get a chance to grab them. What I like to do, and maybe, how many of you have seen my presentation before? All right, buckle up, same stories. So I don't have new material.
Different.
It's going to be the same thing. So what I like to do is I come not with a PowerPoint presentation because in my little pea brain, that to me, that means I know what you need to learn. And I'm telling you what you need to know. And I'm not too much of a fan of that, not anymore. Sometimes I do that. But right now, what I like to do is say, what do you want to talk about? What questions, concerns, issues, topics do you want to make sure we cover today? And you guide the direction that this training goes. That way, some of you have been here before, but this might take a completely different track depending on what we want to talk about. So that's why I think people, I do this twice a year in Missoula, and I've been doing it for nearly 10 years. And so several of you just keep on coming back because no two are the same, and we cover different topics each time. So, so if you can be thinking about what are some of the issues and topics you want to make sure we cover, that will serve somewhat as a agenda for us. And I'll fill in the gaps because there are things I want to make sure we cover, whether you want to learn about it or not. We're going to cover it just because it's important. So with that, does anyone have anything in particular? They came here all the way from Sealy Lake. Why am I here? What do I want to learn? Or this is the thing I want to understand better. So anyway, what would you like to make sure we cover today? What should we put up here on our list?
We have a couple questions on TC scan.
Great.
One, confirming that arrival and departure of board members, recording that in the minutes. And one, triggering the need to record a board approved resolution with the clerk and recorder's office.
Can you repeat all that?
Okay. The first question is confirming only board members arriving and departing meetings needs to be recorded in the minutes. And the second question is what triggers the need to record a board approved resolution with the clerk and recorder's office?
I think on that one. Okay, good. What else? Anything else online or,
That's all I have in the chat right
all right, so.
I'm on West Valley.
Rules around the subcommittees.
Right. Subcommittees, good.
Issues surrounding the authority that elected officials serving on these boards have over employees.
Okay. Elected official staff, that relationship, talk about that. Okay,
I have a question from Sealy Lake.
Go ahead, Tom.
Hey, Tom.
Okay, just real quickly, we do have 4 boards represented in our room: Fire Board,
AIS board.
Aquatic Invasive Species, the Sewer Board, and the Community Council. And the question is, what we would like, and I know you've done this before, what has to go in the minutes in terms of this item, that item, that item, because when we get new volunteers on board, sometimes they think they need to write a novel for one meeting.
okay, great. So the contents of minutes,
Thanks.
good. Anything else? Either virtually or in the room?
I'm curious, what issues are likely to come up, say, the legislature? What are the current structural issues that we're finding conflicts with these?
Yeah. There's been some things over the last 2 sessions that deal with some of this.
Current lawsuits related.
Yeah. We can chat about some of those things. Because oftentimes people get frustrated in a district if those that are representing them aren't compliant. They are not doing their duties. They're not following through on their responsibilities or actively doing things inappropriately. What recourse? And so we can talk about that. That's the legislature is tried to address that in the last couple sessions. So so they've enhanced the accountability and made it easier for the constituency to hold you accountable for your behavior and actions. Oh, I've got to put that up there. Yes. Okay, recent legislation. Yeah.
Answering questions on topics that aren't on the agenda in a board meeting.
Okay. So we'll put non-agenda. When we get to that area. Yeah, we did. Or we put on that. Pretty good. You're seeing I'm running out of paper, so you're saying we're gonna. All right. Well, this is a great list. We'll pull a lot of this into our conversation then. I noticed we didn't do anything on, and maybe it's not an issue for many of you, it may not be an issue, but privacy rights of individuals in meetings or deal with the public's right to know versus the individual right to privacy. Is that of interest to anybody or like, nah, screw them? Would like to go over that? Okay. All right. Okay, well, that's a good list. And of course, that's it. That's all we're talking about. Your chance to add anything is over. It's a pretty flexible conversation we're gonna have, so feel free to ask additional questions as we go through things as a group. What I like also to do in these, I like to start out by giving you a broad perspective and a grounding in your public service and in your role as a public official. Because in your role as a board member, you are representing the public. And they have given you the ability to make decisions on their behalf, which is an awesome responsibility that's placed upon you to make decisions for whoever's within your jurisdiction. So there's a relationship that you have. They've given you that ability to make those decisions. However, they expect you to let them know when you're meeting, what you're meeting and discussing, and allow them to participate in that conversation. So that's kind of that relationship that you have in this role. This is the representative democratic process that we're so proud of. And so we've got to understand what that responsibility is and how important it is. And once you get your head wrapped around that, it's easier to understand why, when we start talking about some of these things, it seems awfully clunky and inefficient. And boy, it sure takes a long time. This doesn't make sense. Well, if you put it through the lens of I'm here to just make money like a business, right? Yeah, it doesn't make sense, but we're not in a business. Government is not a business. Government's purpose is to serve people and deliver services to the people. Business interest is to make a profit, so they're going to try to find those efficiencies. You don't walk into the town pump. You guys got a town pump on every third corner here too, don't you? Okay. You don't walk into a town pump and on the door, it doesn't have a notice saying, come and comment on our annual budget. Right? You don't see that. Why don't you see that on the town pump door or Walmart or Costco or REI or any of the other stores that you might patron? They're a private business and they don't care what you think. Their relationship with you is transactional. You give me money, I'll give you a jacket. You give me money, I'll give you a sticker bar, right? It's a transactional relationship. Where in government, it's some of these services you can provide, water was over here, water. You have no other option, right? You have a monopoly. So basically what you're doing is the public. Here's the thing to think about. The public at some point, years ago, determined that there are certain things that make sense to do collectively rather than individually. What would be some of those things that they said, you know what, let's pool our resources together and collectively offer this service to ourselves? Law enforcement, right? So public safety. So law enforcement, fire protection, roads and transportation, water, sewer, education, public health. So those are the things that government's responsible for. What government, which all y'all are government, what you're doing is you're facilitating the discussion of the community around that particular service. Fire, right? What level of fire protection do we want to have in our fire district? If you want to have a fire response time of 5 minutes anywhere in the district, we can deliver that. But on the other side, what's the other side of that equation? You have to pay. You got to pay for it. You got to pay for it. So we can get to your house, wherever you're at in the district, in 5 minutes, but you got to pay for that level of service. So what you're doing is you're facilitating that conversation, trying to determine what level of service do you want to have and what are you willing to pay for it. That's where we've appointed or elected you to facilitate that conversation. So understanding that relationship you have with the public, then it makes sense why we're going to make sure our meetings are open to the public. We're going to notice them. We're going to say, here's our agenda. And you have an opportunity to come and talk and participate and influence us as we better understand what your needs are and then make a decision on that. All right, so once we get that figured out, that helps. And then it makes more sense when we talk about some of the things that people might say, gosh, that just really seems to be inefficient. And in that context of understanding what your role is, okay, it makes more sense now. So what was the most exciting and important thing that happened in Montana in 1972? Constitution. I love it because 15 years ago when I asked that question, it would just be silence. So I don't know, it's been, well, I'm sure we had our constitutional celebration, all that stuff, and so it's been great to see that more people respond, but we have.
Me too, because we're gonna vote on it again in 2030. Every 20 years,
Yes.
we vote whether we want to keep it.
Every 20 years, right? So it's coming up. And so we're gonna vote whether we want to have another constitution convention. Yeah. That's just mine. So that's 1972. I was talking and trying to write at the same time, so bear with me. 1972, we adopted a constitution. Now what? What's the purpose of a constitution?
Provide the parameters to operate.
Okay, provide the parameters by which government operates. Rights and responsibilities, duties included in that,
Create the structure of government.
structure of government. So we did in 1972 is we convened 100 folks. They came to Helena and they fussed and cussed and decided this is the document that we want to be governed by. And then they kicked it out to all of us in the state and we voted and ratified this. And every 20 years since, we reaffirm this is what we want to be governed by. So do you think we're governing the entire state and all this complexity in every department, all the way down to local government solely from this document? No, it provides a very broad, high altitude framework. And then who meets after this has been ratified and what do they do to clarify this and operationalize this?
Legislature.
Legislature meets. Legislature meets, move the keepers, that's a G, and they create the Montana Code annotated. This is gonna be a mess all day, I can tell already. My hand and brain are flowing really well today. So they create the Montana Code annotated. Now, we go from 72 pages in the Constitution. How many pages do you think there are in the Montana Code annotated? Thousands, tens of thousands. If you were to look at the MCA on a shelf in the printed form, it would occupy about that much space, nearly 2 feet. And what the legislature does is say, okay, what's the parameters and framework here? Now, how do we operationalize it? So they're gonna give us more detail, specificity, but they only come down to a certain altitude. They're not getting right up in your grill, the local level, telling you exactly what to do, where to do it, and how to do it. But they're saying, here's the powers, duties, and responsibilities you have at these levels of government. Okay? Then it's incumbent upon all of y'all to create local policy. Where you're taking the powers and authority and structure that's developed here in the MCA, and we're gonna create our local policy. That's framed and designed around what it says here, which is tied to the Constitution. Now, those of you on community councils, for example, you're not in this document. You are kind of a product of the MCA. It mentions in the Montana Code annotated that counties can create community councils as advisory groups. It's a potential power that needs to be exercised on the local level. Am I yelling? Oh, projecting on things? This is mine, yeah. My projection place. I just feel like a million as well. So they can exercise, counties can exercise that power or not. And in the county of Missoula, they chose to exercise that authority and create community councils. Now, is there a reason why they want to do that? Or they just want to be unique? How many incorporated municipalities are there in Missoula County?
One.
One. There's one, and there's a bunch of these other communities, unincorporated areas where people are living in close proximity, where there has a potential for struggle and strife and a particular needs are generated from that space. And so by creating a community council, it allows an outlet for those citizens to convene, come together and talk about what are our issues. And then serve as an advisory to the council, or the commission, to take action on behalf of that group of people. So it creates a legitimized voice in that community to represent the interests of that community back to the county commission. If they, and I can imagine, had they not created community councils, and I don't know, I was looking at Frenchtown, where we at Frenchtown? If you look at the census space for Frenchtown, there's about 1,500 people live within the census district of Frenchtown. 1,500 people without some organized way in which they can unify and create a voice and speak as one to the commission. The county commission is sitting there listening to 1,500 voices. They're like, yeah, we can't do this. So we've got to have a better way in which we can hear the voices of that community. So they all come together in Frenchtown, or the community council meets, or at Sealy, or in Rattlesnake, or in Lolo, and they're gonna fuss and cuss over what is it that we want, what is it we need, and how do we communicate that back to the commission, who has then the authority to make decisions on your behalf. So it has some sort of a thoughtful structure to it. All right, so these local policies, either the creating of many of you, so there's several of you here are representing that are serving on a board that isn't specifically called out in the Montana code. But you are a creation. There was the governing body, whether the city or county, said there's a need that exists. And they have the power on the local level to create a board that meets a governmental purpose. So some of you fall within that general category. There's governmental purpose that we've identified. We're going to create a board that's going to convene community around this specific issue and mediate that discussion and either advise us or take action as an administrative board. Does that make any sense? Hoping it makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't make sense when it comes out of my mouth. All right. Here's another thing. This former legislator, sometimes, where's another one? Current or former? Current? Sometimes. I know it's hard to believe, but sometimes the language that might be found in the MCA is ambiguous. Well, I know, wah, wah. So when you're trying to create your local policies and you're structuring your local policy on ambiguous language, what do we do? How do we? Court. Yes. So you've got a couple options to clarify what it means here. And you can do that in two ways. One is you can say, well, we think it means this, so we're going to throw that down there in a policy, and we'll let all y'all, the citizens out there, if you don't like it or think we've overstepped and we're beyond the intent of what the MCA was trying to accomplish, you can sue us, right? So that's where we tap into that branch of government, the judicial branch, and we're asking them, can you clarify the law for us, right? Is that always the best strategy?
Oh, back to the legislature.
Yes. So one option, you come back here and say, hey, can you clarify that? Or another option is to go to a person in Helena, down a few steps, the Montana Attorney General. So you go to the Montana Attorney General, and we can ask for an opinion. And that opinion, interpreting the law, stands as the law for the state of Montana until either the legislature clarifies the law, or, as we said earlier, the Supreme Court in a decision clarifies that part of the law, and then it would overturn that Attorney General. So I tell you all this because there are things we're going to talk about today that we're going to read what it says here, and we're going to find some ambiguous language. And you're going to say, well, what does that mean? I want to make sure I'm following the law. But the law doesn't give me a bright line to know when I'm consistent with the law or when I'm inconsistent with the law. It's a big fuzzy gray line. And if I want to make sure I'm following the law and complying and honoring the people that I'm serving, I can't do that with this ambiguity. So then the Attorney General steps in and gives us that clarification. And so now I can write my local policy and say, here's the line. Everybody's going to follow this same standard. And this is the side of the line we're going to be on. Making sense? So let's look at an example for that. In your packets, page 1, top of page 1, ironically, is part of our Constitution. Article 2 is our Declaration of Rights. This is our local Bill of Rights in Montana. And I want to just point out there's the three in particular for the context we're discussing today. I think there's 28 enumerated rights in our Constitution. There's the right to participate. Section 8, Section 9, the right to know, Section 10, the right to privacy. So looking at number 8, says the public has a right to expect governmental agencies, so all y'all, right? Governmental agencies, to afford such reasonable opportunity for citizen participation in the operation of the agency prior to final decision, as may be provided by law. So legislature, you need to create laws that ensures that the public has an opportunity to participate in the discussion prior to final action. Number 9, no person shall be deprived of the right to examine documents or to observe the deliberations of all public bodies or agencies of state government and its subdivisions. Again, all y'all included there. Except in the case in which the demand of individual privacy clearly exceeds the merits of public disclosure. And the last one, the right of privacy, the right of individual privacy, is essential to the well-being of a free society and shall not be infringed without the showing of a compelling state interest. So I really find those two, the last two, 8 or 9 and 10, as being a very interesting set of rights. One, you have the right to know, examine documents, and to observe the deliberations. And the other one's the right to privacy. Now, that sets us up in a public agency or public board that there might be times where those two rights may come in conflict. That former superintendent of schools, I overheard, eavesdropping. You think that ever came up at any time that you were serving on?
A few times.
A few times, right? So an individual's right to privacy, balancing with the public's right to know, can come in conflict. And you, in that agency, in that board, and in particular, the board chair, is the fulcrum that is trying to determine that balance of those two constitutional rights, because by the end of that meeting, someone's right will be violated. Either the public's right to know or an individual's right to privacy. So it's a pretty important spot to be in. You try to balance. So we'll walk you through that. Yes.
State legislature clear the gallery during bill discussions. Not now.
No, I just can't talk. Yeah. I'll just, in spite of good service, I would use the legislature, except for one exception, as an example of how to govern.
Correct.
I'll just say that. But I do like how if you do observe or participate like in committee meetings and how they set it up where it's Madam Chair or Mr. Chair, Chair recognizes, and that formality really helps keep the temperature down. It creates a civil environment. It's clunky, but it creates a very civil environment. So trying to figure out how do we kind of mirror some of that in our boards so we don't get too emotionally charged. It's about once or twice a year. Somebody somewhere gets into fisticuffs at a board meeting or a council meeting or a commission meeting. That just happens.
Public safety.
More than that.
Yes. So if we're to do a little bit more of that, yeah. So what I'll talk about is just kind of what these standards are, and we'll talk about the law, and then the legislature can use them to take for themselves.
We have our own rules.
You have your own rules, and I don't want to step into that space. And I'm not saying it's wrong. It's not awesome.
We have Robert's Rules of Order.
Yeah. All right. So we see the constitutional rights, right? Now, 3 sentences. 3 sentences of the Constitution. Then we drop down to the MCA. That's what's the next session. We got like 8 pages trying to clarify those 3 sentences. Right? Which makes sense, right? We've established what the standard is. Now we're going to say, how do we operationalize that standard from soup to nuts, right? From the FWP, Wildlife Commission, all the way down to a water sewer board. We've got to have the same standard. So if you look at 23103, public participation. Each agency, which if you look up above agencies, it has a definition of what agency is, and it pretty much encompasses local government. So we are considered an agency in this context. Each agency shall develop procedures for permitting and encourage the public to participate in the agency's decisions that are of significant interest to the public. You need to develop procedures for a local policy that defines how we're going to notice the public and allow them to participate in our meetings. And I also want to point out there, it says you have in these procedures, you need to encourage the public to participate in those agency actions. So think about what are we doing as a board to encourage public participation. It's not a common phone call I get from different boards and commissions, like, what can we do to get rid of all these people? They're just getting in the way, they're gumming things up, they're asking all these questions, it's like, it's really irritating. It's like a teacher, I used to be a teacher, I love teaching if it worked for all those kids. They really got in the way. The next sentence, the procedures or your local policies must ensure adequate notice and assist public participation before final agency action is taken, that is of significant issue for the public. So here's that fuzzy gray line. When you're trying to create your local policy, you're referring back to the MCA that's tied to the Constitution, right? We've got to make sure that the public is able to participate and they can observe our deliberations. But it tells us the standard is we need to provide adequate notice. Notice. What is adequate? Because looking at you, you look to me like a person of peace. Beat it out, 54 hours, I'm dead. You just give me that vibe, but 2 weeks,
Yes.
a letter in the mail, bring a van by and pick me up. So if I'm trying to create a policy, where do I bend that policy more to the 2 weeks or to the 4 hours? And that's the challenge when all we have to go by is adequate notice. And what was happening is a county would say, well, we think it's 36 hours. A city within that county would say, well, we think it's 72 hours. And then the fire district might say, well, we think it's 48 hours. So as a constituent who may be overlapping in 3 different jurisdictions, there's 3 different standards that interprets adequate notice. Yes,
So, forgive me, because I'm recently retired Forest Service. So, how we manage the public. Because we're seeing a lot of grandstanding. I see that in boards. So, where they're, like, I'm depriving you of your comment because I'm standing up there and talking for 20 minutes, but for the Forest Service, how we always dealt with that was building stations, so you can split everybody up. And is there something to prevent grandstanding so that everybody gets a voice?
yeah. And we could talk about how to manage that public participation. There's strategies and I've worked with the Forest Service before doing these type of projects, and they would work really well as a work session prior to a decision-making meeting, where you're allowing the opportunity for the public to come in and learn and be educated about it. Because the risk is they may be learning, quote unquote, learning or being educated about that issue. Where's the source? Facebook, right? Is Facebook the most accurate place to get information about this stuff? No, but that's where they're learning, so they're coming all hot and bothered and wound up, and they want to yell at you. So there's some strategies. That's a great strategy. Do as an informal listening session ahead of time, allow people to come in and be educated about it. That's a great strategy. Whatever you can do to provide that education would be great. As I mentioned before, in those first 2 sentences, one of them says providing, what was it? Encouraging the public to participate. The next sentence says needing to assist the public in participating. So in 2 sentences, there's 2 expectations that are active expectations that you're either encourage or assist the public in participating. So there is an expectation, and it's tied, if you read back to the intent of the constitutional rights. And it comes back to the very nature of your existence is that you're here to facilitate the public's conversation. Which is different than we're just going to make decisions on your behalf to go just have to live with. No, we're actively wanting to engage you and manage and facilitate that discussion. Now, adequate notice. You don't get time.
Yeah, no, I would just say,
Okay.
public comment at the end of each of your items would be a big help in facilitating that conversation. And I know commissioners use a timer, a 3-minute timer. You can allow everyone the ability to talk.
And what we'll do in a few,
That's not.
yeah, and what we'll do in a few minutes is we'll talk about some of the things, how to manage in your local policies to set those expectations and standards. And so hang on, we'll get to that exciting part, because that's a lot of fun, and that's what we're gonna pick on fire districts. We already used that.
But there isn't a standard.
Pardon?
There isn't a standard.
For,
If different committees can.
for the public comment, I mean,
A rotation.
Yes.
You can-
Yes, I do.
There's not a steadfast way to. do it.
yeah, and we'll talk about let's just put that up here. We'll talk about public comments and time and how that might look, yes. So the adequate notice issue, what is adequate notice? What was happening is all these different jurisdictions have different standards. So a bunch of city and county attorneys got together and they said, well, what does this law mean and how do we interpret that? And no offense to any attorneys in the room. You get 5 attorneys in the room, you're gonna get how many opinions? Okay, so they're like, we don't know what that means. We don't know what that specific standard is. So then they asked the Attorney General. So in 1989, Missouri weighed in on the issue and established a standard that we can then use in our local policies. And that standard is 48 hours. 48 hours is now the standard that has interpreted that part of the law that says adequate notice. So the adequate notice now is converted to 48 hours. That's an AG opinion. What I find interesting is the legislature can clarify that, right? That was part of those options. And this statute was last visited by the legislature at not this past session, but in 2023. And there was an opportunity, since they're cracking that section of the law open, they could have gone in there and clarified that and said, hey, we're gonna put a standard in there, it's gonna be 48 or 24 or 72 or whatever. But apparently they probably didn't think about it. It's like, yes, I probably thought about it. I didn't even realize it's what they're doing. But they could have established a standard and clarified that. So we'd no longer be operating and governing ourselves based on an Attorney General opinion from 1989, but we can now have a clarification right here in the statute. Because what they did is they established in 2023 this B, letter I, letter double I, big AB, that was all added. And they've made it clear that you now need to publish your agenda. Not just, we're meeting at Thursday night at 7 o'clock at the fire hall, but an agenda, which is establishing, this is what we're gonna hear and discuss and act on as a board. You're gonna notice that electronically. So you need to reach out to the local newspaper and say, will you post our meeting agendas on your website for free? And if they say yes, that's your out. If they say, no, we won't do it for free, then you have to establish and notice that on your local board's website. And if you don't have a website, you need to create a social media presence and put it on there. So now there's an expectation that in addition to noticing your meeting physically in your jurisdiction, right? Putting out meeting notices like you had always been doing, like here's our agenda, put it on your fire district door or the water district door, put it at the library, put it at the city hall or the county courthouse, those physical locations. In addition to that, you need to do it online. So you read that. It's either with the local newspaper, and if they don't do it for free, then you need to do it on your own website. So if you don't have a website, you can just create a Facebook page.
County websites, that's all,
Pardon?
county websites. All, that's what they're at.
Your questions about the county one.
You do that, yeah. And what we were finding. So they still put the expectation for the agency to have a social media site. What we found is like up at the Gap. They don't have internet. You say, how do we do this if we don't even have the internet? So so well, do something. So they're posting with the county. Go ahead.
So this reads like, if your local newspaper offers free publication, you have to do that. And then, so if you have your own website, post it there, can you do either?
Yeah,
or?
you can do both. If the what newspaper does it for free, that's the default. That doesn't prevent you from doing it on your local website as well.
But
If they don't do it for free, then it triggers your local site.
if they do it for free and you post it on your website,
Fabulous.
you have to post it in the newspaper. That's
No.
all I'm saying.
Not good.
Okay.
I believe most counties have the account with the newspapers and they pay routine for these.
For some, yes, some newspapers still don't allow us, and also for county, I know that I have created hyperlinks to like fire district board and Sealy, I just updated from their website. So I've created hyperlinks to also go to your board's websites. I didn't use them.
And so each county and community is different, and some will say, look, those boards that are in our jurisdiction, fair board, weed board, we're gonna be responsible, but those boards outside of our jurisdiction, like a fire district board, a water district board, conservation district board, that you're on your own. Or they might say, hey, we're all part of the same county. Each county defines that differently, so.
Then they are still part of the same thing with us. I reach out for candidate filing and everything like that. You'll hear from me.
The other thing, go ahead.
How did they decide on the 48 hours? Like, is that based on other states or like, what is the?
So typically what the Attorney General will do is he'll read back when they have this conversation here, they'll read all of that and say, what was their intent? What were they trying to accomplish? And throw a dart at the board.
Yep.
You know, so they just came up, or Zurich came up with the 48 hours. And on top of that, he said that amount of time should increase with the relative importance of the decision being made.
Yeah.
There you go. But here's the thing that we have found. No one has pushed back on that other part of it. Typically what's happening on those issues that are that are of high importance, it's usually not showing up on the agenda for the first time the day you're making that decision. It's been on there multiple times. And so we've never seen that to be a problem when it says it should increase with the relative importance. So if you're buying a fire truck, it shouldn't just show up one day, buying a fire truck for $300,000. It's likely, and we'll talk about that in a minute, you know, how that's part of the discussion of the board. Letter C, it says the agenda, on page 1, the agenda must include an item allowing public comments on any public matter that is not on the agenda, but that is within the jurisdiction of the agency conducting the meeting. So the first part says you need to permit and encourage the public to participate, i.e. public comment, before agency action. And then at the bottom of this, it says you also need to allow the public to comment on anything that's not on your agenda. This is how they get exposed to other issues and items of interest that they're asking you to deal with. I do not think that there is one city council in this state that on their own volition decided to take up the issue of urban chickens. They're not saying, hey, let's talk about, no, they're responding to the public's interest to deal with urban chickens. And so they likely got that input through public comment on items not on the agenda. Does that make sense? Yes.
You're picking on chicken.
Any chicken lovers here? We just love talking about chickens. There are some communities that even they put it out on the vote. There's a couple that put it on the vote, and the town campaign, they had campaign signs. It was wonderful. Vote, what it said, cluck yes for chickens, cluck no for chickens. And those were all over town, and so it was kind of a fun, but it was on the high line. What else are you gonna do in the middle of winter? But this is the entertainment. They would move their meetings, the city council meetings, to the high school gym. 300 people were showing up to debate the issue of chickens. Now, here's a beautiful story about that. And this really comes down to the essence of what we're all about here, is in that situation, there was a guy that was coming every meeting, and he was hammering on the issue that we need chickens, we need to allow chickens, chickens should be part of our community, it's who we are as this town. And just eloquent about it and consistent and passionate. They eventually passed the ordinance. 6 months later, the clerk is down at this post office, cluck, She's getting the mail and she comes across this gentleman and says, "Hey, Bob, I noticed you haven't been into the city hall to get your permit for chickens." He's like, "I don't want chickens. Well, nothing to do with chickens." She said, "Well, you're at every meeting advocating for chickens." Well, yeah. I don't want chickens, but I want to live in a community that allows chickens to be here.
Right.
That's what this is all about. It doesn't necessarily have to be this big fight, but it's like, what do we stand for as a community? And I want our community to represent that. It may not be necessarily in my interest. I may not have an interest myself, but I think it's important for those that want chickens, the ability to have chickens. And that, I think, is what makes us and sets us apart for primates. Okay, so. All right, so let's transition, because we're gonna get into this discussion about how we manage our agendas and how we manage this public comment and what should your policy look like. You should all be adopting procedures, right? That local policy. So you should have what many people will call bylaws. Other, we sometimes call them rules of procedure. So what should your bylaws look like? What should be contained in them? Because here's the pro tip for you. If you don't have rules for how you conduct your business as a board, like where are we going to notice our meetings? How are we going to get things on the agenda? Who creates the agenda? Where do we meet? When do we meet? Who facilitates the meetings? What happens when the chair is not there? Who's next? All that stuff is figured out once. So you get all that figured out and you adopt it. That becomes the governing document for that organization. You're less subject, or there's less of a risk to have personalities take over the effectiveness of your board. Does that make sense? Because we've established how we're going to conduct business. We're less susceptible to that bully that gets appointed or elected that said, "Well, I don't want to do it this way. I want to do it this other way." I said, "Well, that's fine, George or Jane or whoever you are. That's fine. But we have these rules. We've decided how we're going to conduct business. Now, if you want to propose something else, we have a process that we go through, a public process by which we can change these things. But for now, this is how we're going to conduct our business. We're going to allow public comment at this time. We're going to do, and it's all established. We make the decision one and then just execute.
The other reason we do it is people who didn't like your decision could claim that you didn't follow a legitimate process, so it wasn't a legitimate decision, you're off to court.
Yes.
So unless you have this rule and you're abided by it, you don't have a leg to stand on.
I call them procedure hawks.
Yep.
These procedure hawks that will, that they find themselves on the dissenting or the losing side of some sort of public debate. The people that lost the chicken debate, right? And so they're going to fight, and they're going to, since we didn't prevail on preventing chickens or having chickens, whatever it might be, we're going to look at every little thing you did. Did you notice the meeting properly? Did you, was it 48 hours in advance? Did you allow public comment? Did you do this? Did you do that? And if they find something that you did that was inconsistent with your policies or with the MCA, that's the thing they'll hang their hat on, and they're going to take it to court and say, they violated my right and they're not wrong. They violated my rights to participate because I wasn't properly noticed. That makes sense? So one, it creates stability, and people on your board will come and go, but the way your board behaves and conducts its business is going to be consistent, which really is appreciated by the public. They know exactly how to engage and participate in that process regardless of who's in it. And it's easier to attract well-meaning people when you have a stable board. If your board is constantly fighting and bickering and carrying on up to shenanigans, who's going to be attracted to that environment? More people that want to bring on the shenanigans, right? And so then it becomes this thing. It's like, wow, this is better than YouTube. And so let's go to the fire board meeting tonight because this is going to be a lot of entertainment, right? So we're not necessarily expecting that when we're talking about things like our water delivery. I want you to be competent if you're delivering my water to me. I want you to be competent if you're going to be protecting me from fire. I need you to be competent. And as you demonstrate your competence, what's gonna happen to the trust level?
Yeah.
It's gonna go up. Why is having trust in government important? The higher the trust that you have with the public you serve, the lower the transaction cost of doing business. If you are looking, to say, look, we are struggling, our fire district, you want better service? We can provide that, but we're gonna need to ask you on a mill levy ballot initiative to increase your taxes in order to do that. But if I don't trust you, what's the likely vote going to be? I don't think you're competent. What's the likely vote going to be? So demonstrating your competence, building that trust, and then it's a better conversation to have with the public, and they're more willing to support you when you're asking for something from them.
Democracy depends on the public trusting that it's a fair, reasonable process.
It all falls apart. Here's the thing. I shouldn't talk about this, but
Right now, that's the issue.
yeah, I'll tell you, I'll just talk about my experience in Montana. I've been doing this for 18 years. I do about 120 presentations a year. I'm in every crack and corner of this state. What I'll tell you the last 10 years is that it's a delicate, it's an elegant. This structure here is elegant, it's beautiful, it's inspiring to see it work, but it's extremely fragile. The fragility that if people decide that I'm not gonna follow those rules, the accountability structure is really not, it's really difficult. So here's what we've been seeing more common now, is that people will say, I know that's what the law says, but I'm not gonna do it because it's inconvenient to me. What's the likelihood the public is gonna hold me accountable? Are they going to rise up and sue me and hold me accountable in court? I don't think they are. It's always been the threat, or it's been just your willingness to provide the service. You swear an oath, and that oath meant something to me, so I'm gonna step up, I'm gonna do the job, and I'm gonna follow the law. But I'm finding more and more that people are saying, I'm not gonna do that. What are you gonna do about it? You've had county commissioners that don't live in the district, they lie on their form to file. They put a different address in another district. They get elected. The public says, wait a minute, you don't even live in this district. I said, yeah, what are you gonna do about it? Because you gotta sue me and take your evidence to court and prove that I don't live there. Fragile, but it's. So I'm inspired by the elegance of it, and that's why I'm so passionate about what I do. I want to make sure, yeah, we need to follow the law because it's not going to work if we don't. Soapbox, throw in the corner. All right. The next thing, this public comment thing. So the law, here's how you look at this, and as you're framing out your bylaws or your rules of procedure, one of the things I would suggest you do is put your agenda structure or framework in your bylaws. This is what our agenda is going to be like, and so you adopt that, and that's the consistent way in which you're going to do it. Every chair, no matter who they are, is going to use that as a framework for your agenda. Now, where do we put public comment on there? Because we just read in the law that you need to allow the public to comment prior to agency action. Okay, so we need to allow it. You could, and I'm going to say this, these are options. The law doesn't specify one way or the other than you have to allow public comment before final agency action. So, with that expectation, here are some options. Choose your own adventure, but write it down, stick with it, right? Follow it if it's written down. So you can do public comment at the beginning of the meeting. So this would be public comment on the agenda. You could, because the other standard or expectation is public comment on things not on the agenda, but within your jurisdiction. You could do that at the same time. Public comment not on agenda, but within jurisdiction. You can do that all at the same time at the beginning of the meeting. Sufficient? What are some downfalls of that?
The agenda.
So the potential is we may never get to the agenda because we're gonna spend all this time here. So that might not work really well. Some of you might have meetings that consistently no one shows up. Sometimes people show up and they say, well, gosh, I don't want to wait for the whole meeting to be able to say what I want to say here. I'll get another, I was the mayor of a small town in Montana. So I will say, no, I want you to have your comment at the end because I want you to experience this meeting. Want you to see, I want to demonstrate to you our competence. I want you to feel inspired that you're in good hands. So I want you to that was just our philosophy. If we wanted them to experience meetings, we did this at the end. You can do public comment, not on agenda, no jurisdiction down here. So you bookend your agenda with public comments. But this one is on the agenda, ask you before action. The other option is you do public comment with each agenda item. You just need to remember, I'm a big fan of scripts. I'd have a script. Have that part of your, like, here's the agenda for the chair, and it just fills in that script. And so you have, like, if you're the support, agency support, the admin support for that agency, build out that agenda. And you can print out the agenda for the chair, and here's the agenda for the rest of the public. And they can read that script. We have samples of the script if you want. Reach out to us. We provide some script language for you. But it's like, welcome to our fire district meeting. We're glad you're here. We look forward to hearing what you have to say. We're going to start out this meeting by soliciting public comment. Now, if you're here to make public comment, here are some expectations we have on how we would best like to receive that public comment. And then you go through and you can identify, here are our ground rules for public comment. In fact, what we've been finding is districts and boards have been putting those ground rules and expectations for how we want the public to engage the board on the back of the agenda. Chair can say, if you turn your agenda over, you will see. This is what, keep your comments concise. We're looking for new information, not the same information over and over. Be respectful in your language. Keep your comments under 3 minutes. You know, and you just list out those expectations. They've been adopted by the board. And so those are your standards. And that's what, if you get sued, the court's gonna, the first thing they're gonna say is, show me your policy. And then we'll watch the video. How well did you match your behavior with your policy? Making sense? Go ahead.
Is there any guidance around how the board follows up on public comments? So if somebody comes in every single month or every single week and makes the same comment and we just listen to it and we never do anything about it, is there anything around guidance around expectation there?
No. So part of that is down to you as a board, right? Some things might be relevant. Some things are like, well, yeah, we tried that and then, you know, or we attempted or we tried to answer, you know, so yes, so you've got to figure out how to manage that. One of the things to just remember is that this is public comment. They can choose to use that time to ask questions, but there's not an obligation on your part to respond to those questions. Some cities have now got to the point in their script that mayor will say, if you've got a lot of questions, we may not have time tonight to address those questions. However, we're open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Come on in and ask your questions. We'll give, so oftentimes it is kind of it's theater. And then they can be, they didn't answer my question. It's like, yeah, well, we're here to receive comment that's going to inform us on how to make the decision, not the public debate. And then how do we have other forums where we can address those questions, right? So what else can we do as a board to engage our public, to discuss the issues that are important, that might inform us, that might result in a policy later? Does it help?
It's smart upfront, though, to say that you're not going to respond to their liability issues and all kinds of other things. One of your procedures for how you take public comment might be to say you are not going to respond. This is a listening session. We do not respond officially to any of the comments that are made here today.
So, yeah, I think having that clarity of expectation. And so it doesn't mean that their behavior will change. And what we'll find is when that is transparent, and then so back to the agenda is a place to put it. We even have some that put it on the wall. When you walk into Missoula City Hall, I don't know if I'm assuming it's still there, but when you walk in their door for their chambers, there's a big old framed ground rule, right? Or it's, I can't remember what they call it. I took a picture of it somewhere on this. It's in here somewhere at the 12,000 other photos, but they establish those expectations. And I don't know if the current mayor's referring to that or not, but those are helpful things, right? Help the public understand your expectations for them because they'll come with their own. And if you don't establish those expectations, they may not align, and that just creates a lot of frustration and tension. All right, so we'll keep going here. The other thing I want to encourage you to think about when it comes to your agenda, because the agenda now needs to be posted, right? Just not date, time, place, but it's like, this is our full agenda. So you need to have that prepared and out the door 48 hours prior to the meeting. It doesn't mention weekend hours or anything else, business hours, it just says 24 hours. So 24 hours.
48.
I'm sorry, 48 hours, thank you. Now, this is what I like to pick on fire districts because they're so much fun. If your agenda says fire truck, do you as a member of that district feel adequately noticed? What are we doing with the fire truck? Buying one, painting one, fixing one, selling one? What's going on with the fire truck? So if you're planning to purchase a fire truck, then put it on there. Say purchase of 2008 2.5 ton pumper truck for $300,000. I'm just making this up. Put it on there. Nothing to hide. That's what we're planning to do. It's going to happen. If it happens, it's like, I want to make sure that people knew that that's what we're doing. So put it out there. And what might even help for the other board members, if you were to frame that notice on the agenda, similar to what a motion might read like. See where I'm coming from? Purchase up 2.5 ton pumper truck. The purchase up. We're anticipating the purchasing of it. So the public knows what's your expectation. Now, my hope is that you've been talking about this pumper truck for a long time. It is part of your capital improvement plan. It has been on, you've budgeted for it. You've done a bidding process. And you've been looking, all that. This is where I talk about, this is a big purchase. It's going to be important for the public to be noticed, but it's going to be likely talked about 4 months leading up to that decision. So it's going to be difficult for the public to claim if it's been adequately noticed and discussed. I didn't know you were doing that. Well, it's not that we didn't notice you. You just chose not to participate in that, but participate, own your citizenship, but you've asked us to make decisions on your behalf. Our obligation to you is to let you know what we're doing on your behalf. We're giving you an opportunity to participate. Can't come in after the fact and say, well, I didn't know. Right? It's part of that relationship, social contract. This making sense? So now, say, somebody out there, Facebook. I just like to screw things up in there. So I'm gonna write something crazy. And it's like, oh, they're gonna buy a big ladder truck for a 8-story building and blah, blah, whatever. They're gonna stir up controversy using Facebook as a method to do that. And now the public, for whatever reason, trusts some faceless, nameless person online more than you. Now you've got a room full of 50 people that are angry, upset. What are you doing? Right? And they're misinformed about what it is that you're deciding. Right? That's the big thing, is there's a misinformation there, and they're wound up. Now, if you were to have on your agenda, public comment on the agenda at the beginning of the meeting, if you've got a room full of people that are misinformed and upset and angry, you're gonna have 2 hours of people yelling at you about things that don't exist. What you could say, if you're here to comment on agenda item number 3, we're going to allow you specific time on the agenda to make comment. I respectfully ask you to hold off until that time. We'll give you plenty of opportunity then. Just hang on. But if you've got anything else you want to say, here's your opportunity. Now, some people will honor that, some people won't. But you're establishing those expectations. Does that make sense? So we're going to try to push them to that point of the agenda. Now, why do we want to do that? Because during that part of the agenda, we're not going to just launch into public comment. The chair is going to say, okay, now we're going to talk about the purchase of the pumper truck. Chief, can you give us the context? What has brought us to this point so far? So we're going to have a presentation. And in this case, in this scenario, it's the chief. It might be the engineer at the water district. Hey, engineer, could you please tell us, it might be someone from a representative from rural water district saying, how they establish the water rates. This is the methodology that we use to come up with the number that we have.
This is clear.
Right, so you're
Yes,
giving
it is
some sort of
clear.
informational
Let me
presentation to
see
the
if-
public where you're helping them understand what it is that we're deciding. Does that help? Because what they're gonna see, what they're gonna hear as the public is that, oh, when I showed up here and thinking was gonna happen, I'm learning now that that's not necessarily the case. The chief's gonna say, okay, we've been talking about this for 6 years. We're replacing that 1972 pumper truck that hasn't worked for 3 years. It's been parked in the back of the fire hall. You know, it's actually for sale. If anyone else, you know, give us $200, you can have it.
That
So we're
better?
replacing
Yes.
that with this. Now, over the last 5 years, we've been acquiring money. We've been hosting twice a year a pancake breakfast dinner or breakfast thing, right? Fundraiser. We've got 2 grants. We've been saving money. We've been doing this, you know, to tell the story, how you've gotten to the point. Now we feel like, you know, we've got an intercap loan that's gonna push over the top. Now we feel we're ready to make the purchase. What you're trying to do is establish that credibility. We're the adults in the room. We have thought this out. We have had a plan for years, and now we're at the point of executing that plan. You want to instill confidence in them, the public that are there, by explaining to them the process that got you here. Okay, so what do you think is going to happen to the temperature of the room through that conversation? Yeah. They're not going to be so wound up. In fact, some people might say, well, that makes sense. Well, then what I'm hearing here, what I was reading on Facebook doesn't seem to jive. This is that battle for credibility. This is how you pull them over to your side. They're going to start seeing you as the credible source and dismiss the uncredible source. All right, so you're going to have the presentation, and then I would suggest you do a question and answer of the board to the chief or whoever the expert is. And if you're pretty savvy, you know what's the concerns of the public. So ask specific questions, even if the presentation addresses it. Ask, you mean we're doing this and not that? Yes, the chief can say, yes, we're doing this and then, you know, and keep reinforcing. So you go down point by point, clarifying the issues that brought people in the room are not the concern. This is what we're actually doing. So you're diverting them away from that. I would say this is amongst the board and the expert, not the public. Right? They're there to observe your deliberations. And then once this is all done and you feel like you've done the best you can to establish what it is, the decision space that you are occupying, it's the purchase of this and not whatever crazy thing that they're talking about. Then we're going to then we're going to allow public comments. Apologize if my hand, right? So we allow the public to comment. All right, so hopefully that comment now will be less, you know, upset. And I'm going to draw a line here. Why am I drawing a line here? And then after that, we're going to have the motion, discussion, and then we're going to take action on it. So what separates this process from the motion, discussion, and action of the board?
What makes it involved? Comment, not model.
This is the public process. This is the deliberative process. This is where it gets kicked over to the committee, the board, or whomever. Now we're going to deliberate. We've heard it all. We've gathered everything, and we've facilitated this public process. Now we're doing what we've been asked to do, is to make decisions on your behalf. We're taking all that information. We're going to weigh it all out. We're going to try to find what's the best for the most. Even if it's not in your individual best interest. Your duty is to serving the board, or I'm sorry, the district. What's in the best interest of the district? Not necessarily what's in my best interest. That's not why we asked you, because we're really interested in what you want. That's why we've asked the 5 of you just to do what you want. No, it's the 5 of you to make decisions for all of us. What's in all of our best interests. So shifting that mentality to, I'm providing a public service, I'm serving the public. And then that motion, the other thing I want to talk about is you get the motion out there, and if you frame your agenda with language that sounds like a motion, it makes it very transparent, makes it easier for the board member to share. Or here's the other thing, you don't have to recite it. If there's something you hear through the public comment, through the presentation, it's like, well, maybe I want to modify this a bit. I move that we do something different than what it says there. But that's fine. They're just notice that this, we're gonna be making this decision. I think it's empowering to the public to see that, oh, they listen. The fix isn't in. Like, they're open to input. Decision wasn't made yesterday at the bar, and now they're here to ratify it. You know what I said there? Yeah. The pre-meeting meeting, that was unnoticed, no comments and all that. And the other thing I want to talk about is this discussion part is, I would suggest that you always give reasons for your decision. Even if there's nobody in the room, I would encourage you to practice all of this, even when no one's in the room. Because when that meeting shows up and everybody's in the room, if you're not well practiced and disciplined in the process, you're gonna have a really hard time maintaining form. So practice it and give reasons. And that's helpful for the person making the minutes, right? Where we help, we're here, minutes, the content, where you're giving your reasons. I think this is important. I understand the concerns the public has because of X, Y, Z, right? It's gonna cost us money or whatever it might be, whatever those concerns are, validate it. Those are important, and I too feel concerned about that. However, on balance, I think it's really important, and then give your reasons why you want to support this. Let that be on the record and allow the public to hear your rationale. What really disturbs me and disturbs the public is they go through all this process at the end, motion, any discussion, no discussion, we vote. What does that look like? The fix was in. I got nothing to say. Your comments had no bearing on me. I'm ready to go to vote. But so I encourage you to give those reasons and rationale behind the decision you make. This is a complete disaster. I apologize if you're trying to hate that. Any thoughts on that? So if you think about this and say, how do we structure this in our policy, our local policy that gives us the guidance and provides the continuity of government when there's like just a routine meeting that gives us all the structure and confidence to conduct business in a routine meeting, as well as a complicated, difficult meeting, with lots of controversy. The more you practice it, the more confidence you'll have. And again, if you want to be seen as we're the adults in the room, we're, you know, like that. Is that Jordan what saying? Anyway, make you feel good about what you're doing. I will say, if you mismanage this, it's public comment. There's been a couple of situations where, like the city council made a decision final action on an issue prior to public comment. Took action, then allowed public comment. And bad things happened during the meeting. The person was, you know, unwilling to yield the floor. So they're being upheld, and the police had to drag him out of the room. And as a result, that individual, when they were trying to get a legal defense to go to court to defend themselves against the charges that the city placed upon them for disturbing the peace and disrupting the meeting, their attorney asked, so tell us what happened. What's the timeline? I said, well, they made this decision, and then I got up and talked about the decision they just made. And the sharp attorney said, hey, tell me again. You mean they made the decision first and then allowed you to comment? Well, what does the Constitution say? Public has a right to participate prior to. So they countersued the city, prevailed in court, and she was paid $500,000 plus attorney fees. So here's the deal, folks. I've been doing this for 18 years. I'm getting close to retirement, something. When I retire, I'm gonna buy a spinner in. And I'm gonna buy a subscription to every newspaper in the state. And I'm gonna watch when you're having meetings. I'm gonna drive around the state, I'm gonna come to meetings, I'm gonna watch. And this is how I'm gonna fund my retirement. By suing all y'all, because I'm gonna say, look, for the last 20 years, I've been telling you how to do this, and you're still not doing it? Well, you're mine. So if I can roll them at your meeting in my Sprinter van, you bet, oh my goodness, what do our bylaws say? We better follow them today because Dan's here. All right, so that doesn't cause some concern. Go ahead.
I think it's decorum. I mean, I've had a bad experience recently with a local board where the chair who's running the meeting isn't welcoming, genuinely welcoming a public comment. They sit there still faced. Thank the public for coming, whether you agree with them or not. Make them feel welcome instead of, oh, hell, we didn't want to hear from any of you people.
Yes,
You know, that goes a long way to just welcoming your public to a public meeting. And it does not happen often enough.
not enough. And I would say lean in and smile.
Totally.
It's like, oh, so glad you're here.
Thank them. Go up personally and thank them. Like
Yeah.
that.
Because this is what it's all about, right? This is the role I'm playing, is I'm here to serve you. I'm glad you're here because I want to have your input. If you're truly facilitating the conversation, if the fix is already in, it's like now you're just static. Now you're just bugging me because we've already decided what the decision, what we've already made the decision about, right? So be open to that, right? Lean into the intent of the purpose of serving your community in this capacity. Yeah, good comment. And other thoughts?
Rocky people do not make good chairs.
Okay. I want to get some, have we done anything off of this list yet?
Don't you think there's also a tendency sometimes for particularly small boards working informally to kind of have the side conversations and literally do have the fix it before?
Yeah.
And I know for county commissioners, this gets touchy enough that they can't be in the same room. Two of the three can't be in the same room
Yeah.
because of the potential for having made a predetermined, having an illegal conversation
Yeah.
and making the fix it. But I think local boards and commissions don't think enough about that.
Yeah. So,
Just
let's do this. What constitutes a legal meeting? There are 6 criteria in the law that creates a legal meeting. I'm just guessing on the 6. I think. So thoughts, let's get different colors. I'm tired of orange. I don't have a lot of options here. What do we need to have a legal meeting?
Notice.
We need a quorum? Yes, and
Notice.
notice,
Oh.
agenda? Minutes? Obviously, someone said I didn't hear it. Public comment? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. This one you're probably not gonna get. Where's my page? Turn to
Okay.
page 5. Oh,
What's that? That food back there?
the big shot. So page 5, 2, 3, and says 23202, meeting defined. This is gonna give us the last part of this 6th thing. As using this part of meeting means the convening of a quorum. We got that right, a quorum. And what is a quorum? It's a majority. So if it's a 3-member board, a majority is gonna be what? 2.
Two.
3-member board, or, oh, yes,
What
I
is
said-
page
did I say 3?
five?
In my mind, I said 5.
You said page
But now I
9.
said 3. Thank you. In a 5-member board.
Three.
Okay, all right, let me just tell, it's a majority. So a majority, anytime, in this case, this is your comment, right, the county commission,
Let me see.
we've created a
Sounds like
really
it's-
challenging environment for them. There's a whole lot that's swirled around it, but that's, so if there's a 5-member board, anytime 3 of you are
I hear
together,
you.
there's potential for a meeting. All right, so a quorum, okay, this part means a meeting of a quorum, the constituent membership, by means of, either corporal or means of electronic equipment. Corporal meaning what? In person. So either in person or connected electronics, which could be phone call, Zoom, Teams meeting. It can also be created by a text or an email. Now, here's the challenge. Can the public observe your deliberations via a text? So would that work? So if you've got 3 on a 5-member board texting back and forth, talking about business, what have you created? A meeting. And is that a meeting that the public can observe and participate and comment on? No. They've been noticed? No. So you've got to be extremely careful about your electronic communication. It can, I get this call or an email about once a month. Can we vote over email? We make an email vote. No, this is what makes you different than a nonprofit board. Right? Many of you are probably serving on a nonprofit board. That you are different. There's a huge difference between nonprofits. The law says you create your rules, that's your rules. In public, here's the rules, follow the rules. In nonprofit you create, so if you want to do, if I want to give you my vote, what do they call that? Proxy. Is proxy an option in public boards? No. So voting, no, that's, yeah. I'm not gonna address that.
The ones that make up their own rules.
Yeah, so, but in our world, that's not a thing. We don't have proxies. And think about, if you remember back to those 3 constitutional rights that we have, think about that. If I'm giving you my vote, who have I cut out of this whole conversation at the meeting? My public's comment. It means I've made the decision as a board member prior to even getting input from the public. Voting electronically, the public can't weigh in, they can't observe that. I can't hold you accountable for the decisions you're making if I don't see it. I don't see the sausage, the proverbial legislative sausage being cooked up and made. And the public in Montana has a right to observe and participate in how we develop that sausage. I'm hoping you're picking up on. I've been noticing people don't understand that preference.
More than any other state in the United States.
More than-
Constitution.
Yes. We are a unique constitution. I work with my colleagues around the country that do what I do. They're like, how do you guys get business done with such transparency? I said, yeah, grown-ups. We're okay
That's an
with
important
being open about that. And that's our culture and our community. We like to do this.
So easy when
We
you.
do it this way.
run
And
into
let's be
employees or
honest,
something.
where was the seat of
Say,
power in
should
Montana
be-
prior to 1972?
So you say you should talk
I
to
love
people
that
outside?
conversation.
No, I mean, not the board member.
They said, yeah, we lost it. Right, so this really shifted how business was done, public business was done in Montana with this constitution. Because the power resided in you, and it's very opaque in how decisions were made in this state. And the public that showed up as the delegate in the Constitutional Convention said, no, this is about the people, not about corporations. Our previous constitution had buckets of discussion about railroads in our constitution. It's not even mentioned in our current one. So it's shifted. It is a profound shift. And our constitution, by the way, is used by law schools around the country as they talk about state constitutional law. They hold up Montana as being a great example of a small p progressive constitution. That's thinking about the people rather than one. And there's been 3 versions or iterations of state constitutions. And we're kind of the forefront of this one that's really very much about the people and less about retribution or corporations. First one's about corporations, second round of constitutions around retribution, and this round is about the people. And we led the charge on setting the standard for the people being the focus of the Constitution. All right. I just stayed a Holiday Inn Express a lot. I'm not an attorney. Good reference there. So the last, okay, focus, Dan, focus. All right, let's finish this up. We've talked about the electronics, so just be very careful about the electronic communication. It can bite you, and I'll tell you the first thing will happen when you get, if your board gets sued for violation of open meetings, your attorney's gonna say, release all your correspondence, all your emails, and if you have your private personal email account that you're conducting all this public business on, that's going to be part of discovery, and your attorney's gonna have to sit down and look at your email account and look through every one of those emails and say, is it a public email or a private email? Now you're paying someone $350 an hour, either a Sharpie, trying to determine that. So I would suggest creating a board, transportation board member 1, transportation board number 2 @gmail.com. And then that be the public, and that email address goes with the seat. And then that becomes the history and the public record of all your public correspondence for that particular seat on that board. Yes. So that's my suggestion. Try to create a firewall between your public service and your private life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not that most people say, I don't have anything to hide. No, that's fine. But it's also, it's gonna be a huge hassle if something goes south.
Well, I don't think of it as an attorney looking at it in legal action.
everything can be listed.
Yes. Yep. Now, to finish this out. So. Whether corporal by means of electronic equipment to hear, discuss, or act. So hear, discuss, or act. Why the big emphasis on the word or?
Any of those things.
Yeah, any one of those things would constitute a meeting. If there's a quorum present. Which, so if we were to say and act, all three things would have to be happening in order to trigger a meeting. But the legislature, words mean something. So they use specifically the word or, which means if there is a quorum present and you're hearing something within your jurisdiction, that triggers a meeting, which should have public comment, minutes, agenda, and notes. Or the quorum is present and you're discussing something. That these things are not happening, then that's not a legal meeting or acting on something. So those are the key things that if these are the two things that if those two things are triggered, then these things need to happen. Yeah.
Not clear on.
So because the legislature said in the law, they use the word or, that means that any one of these things will trigger a meeting.
When you said what that would be, well, you said in our jurisdiction. Can you say
I
how-
don't remember what I said. I say too many words. Here's a good example. 3 members of the board are sitting in the stands at the high school football game, chatting, talking about hunting, football game, whatever. They're not talking anything about what's in their jurisdiction. So say they're a fire district or a water district, and we're not talking about water stuff, but we are in a quorum. So it's not specifically against the law that you're there as a quorum unless you start talking about things within your jurisdiction. Problem is, public doesn't know what you're talking about. What's their assumption going to be? What you're talking about, and then where's the trust going to go? This is what makes it really different for you, more challenging for you, is you've got to manage some of those perceptions. Right or wrong, that's what they're thinking. Oh, they're up there talking about those new water rates.
Why 2 commissioners don't ride the same car to a public meeting?
Law allows it now, which. Just waiting for that to be. But, yeah, I think the newspaper association is waiting for a good time to take that law and challenge it. Yes.
Example though of, there's 3 of us on this board. And we've heard there's been a meeting, there's no action taken. Is there never an opportunity for the 3 of you to just talk about what you've heard and to process information? Is that, I mean.
Not technically not without having a notice meeting and allowing the public to be part of that and observe your.
So
discussion.
basically, all the deliberations need to be said out loud in the meeting.
And here's another thing that we'll see is some people say, hey, I just read this really cool article and I'm gonna send it out to the board. Hey, take a look at this article. That could be construed as being what? Discussing or hearing. So it's not really efficient, but
Unless you send it out and say, this is for discussion at the next board meeting. So that they have information ahead of the board meeting, so they're ready to discuss it.
And it's included in your packet or whatever.
If it's publicly,
Or if you're not in a quorum, if it's just 2 of you and you're 5 of the board, you can discuss all you want.
I might send it to you and I might send it to you. That might be a way to do it, get around. I don't want to say get around. But really,
That's happening.
it's better not to. So this is what makes it different. It's the system isn't designed for your convenience or efficiency. The intent isn't, we're not trying to make government as efficient as possible. We're trying to make it as fair and accessible as possible. So it's a whole different standard that we're using. But what we keep trying to apply to it is some of these other capitalistic strategies or values that we have that we want to make it quick and ROI and all that stuff. And that's what creates this tension between business and government, or our expectation to have it run more like a business, when it's not designed, it's designed to be fair, equitable, transparent, accessible.
I'm just struggling to imagine how our three wonderful commissioners spend day in and day out together and never talk to each other about any of the issues that are presented.
So here's the thing that might help. We're going to put those up so we have more window space to put those. If I'm to draw the Venn diagram, the context by which we're speaking, how would we lay, this is a quiz, harken back to high school or junior high civics, we're to label those Venn diagram, those circles, the context of government, how would we label them?
Public
What do you
meeting.
mean?
I don't know if that's actually the right question. Okay, so, online folks, I run legislative, executive, and judicial branches of the government. We draw it this way. Well, why do we draw it this way?
They overlap.
They overlap, they are independent, but they also check each other and they balance each other out. So when we talk about lawsuits, they're not necessarily a bad thing. They've got a bad rap, but really what we're appealing to the judicial branch to help us clarify some of this, wherever it showed up here, here it is, the ambiguity. Like, so it's like, let's step out there and we're using it as a strategy. Courts, what say you? So there's a balance there. If you look at the city of Missoula, who represents this branch of government? The city council. This branch is then who? The mayor. And then we have city court. County commission. Who represents this branch of government? The commissioners. Who represents this branch? The commissioners. So in Montana, except for the two consolidated city county governments of Anaconda, Deer Lodge, and Butte Silverbow, the county commissioners represent both of these branches of the government. So when they're in this legislative mode, where they're using discretion and debate about a policy and formulating and creating a policy, that's when it should be reserved to a meeting notice, meeting agenda, and during the defined meeting. If the decision's made and now we're trying to figure out how do we implement it, that's an executive function. Problem is you can flip back and forth between these things in an hour a dozen times.
Yeah.
And so it really requires a lot of discipline or the public's willingness to say, we get it, it's complicated, just treat us with respect and make sure you're doing the important things here. I don't like it, it's not elegant. Most other states have an elected county commission and an appointed county manager. That's how most other states operate. We're still back at Sherwood Forest Dines.
Yep.
So it's not that, and there's other states that are like this. Usually the rural west are like still operate this way, but this model is way back Robin Hood days. It came from the old country. The model that we're using in Montana currently.
But it's only the commissioners that operate like that. Everything else has that balance working for them.
Mostly. And there's two other exceptions with municipalities, but yeah. So in Montana, that's how we look at our county commission.
When a group of members of a board are at a social, like we have an ice cream social, and the whole community comes out.
Yep.
And we are all there.
Yep.
And it's meeting the public.
Yep.
But it's
Love
not a meeting. It's a social event.
So what I would do,
Have made it public to your community that it's happening.
so I would notice,
It's an event.
right, notice
We're eating ice cream.
a quorum of the board will be participating in the social, so however you notice your meetings, you're gonna do all your marketing for the social event as that forward facing, but also in your public duties, you're still gonna notice it. A quorum of the board will be participating in the social. No public business will be discussed as a quorum, no decision will be made. But what you're doing is you're saying, I know that you know, that I know, that you know. Right, and so when I was a mayor, we would have a Christmas party every week. And one of the council members would host it at her house. And we would notice that we're having a Christmas party. Was noticing, we weren't saying y'all come, but letting the public know that we're having a Christmas party, and we invited the press. She was like the fourth branch of government. She was an integral part of our team. Because she had been there for 20 years reporting on city politics. And so oftentimes after the meeting, she would never participate during the meeting, but after the meeting, we say, okay, Melody, what happened then? You know, something came up and we, you know, and then she'd say, well, back in 1989, blah, 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 you know, so she had that historical knowledge. But so she's part of the team. It was really quite an exciting Christmas party because right after the party, we had a city council meeting. And a lot of wine was flowing. And that was probably the most entertaining public meetings. And this is prior to, you know, having to record meetings and all that stuff. And so the newspaper editor just put her pen down and said, I'm not covering this. It was a little bit loud and obnoxious.
So the public technically would have been able to go to that party if they wanted.
Technically, we wouldn't have excluded them or pushed them out. Yeah.
Church of Dublin.
That's how it, I would.
Should we add press to that? This then too, because the press can.
I think they would just be part of this noticing and everything else. You can choose how you want to manage that relationship, but I wouldn't put that as an expectation for.
It's just they're allowed to come.
Yes.
Record.
Because we're letting them,
They're included in
they're
that.
noticed, they're included in that, and then they can
Yeah.
initiate how they want to engage. Yeah. Yes.
Is every board responsible, does every board come up with its own rules for how they establish an agenda? Or are there rules about how agendas are established?
Yes. The MCA is very broad. It just says you need to establish procedures. They don't really talk about agendas and what that should look like, other than the fact that you need to have the public comment being on the agenda prior to making action, and it's somewhere on the agenda, public comment things not on the agenda. So those are the things that they're saying have to be on there. It's up to you how you want to do that. Here's another pro tip for you. On our website, I think on the back or somewhere on our handouts, there is our website. Yeah, I think in the front page, there's our website, msulocalgov.org. Under, what was it, resources. There was another drop down, resources, and then the other one was boards. What we have done is we've created a boilerplate bylaws that are generic in that it meets all the criteria that you need to have to, on the legal side. It's about 8 pages long. We used to include it in this packet, but it was just making it way too big. So we're hosting on our website. It is a Word document, so you can go in there and download it, and then you can customize it and, you know, make it your own, but keep that framework in place. And we have a kind of, this is what the agenda can look like. And if you don't like it, fine, rearrange it how you want, but someone that doesn't, we don't care, we'll take that agenda, that's fine. So I encourage you to use that as a template for you, and then prior to adopting those bylaws, have legal review, have your board attorney or county attorney, whoever your attorney of record is, review it to ensure that is consistent with the law. Good. Okay. Oh, okay. I want to look at, let's look down on page 5, under meetings of public agencies, a certain association of public agencies, so 23203. Let's drop all the way down to number 6. Well, no, let's start number 1. Number 1, easy, all meetings of public governmental bodies, boards, bureaus, commissions, must be open to the public. Okay, so we're just starting at that point. All your meetings are open to the public. And of course, this is also outlining the exceptions to that, which is what we'll talk about for closing a meeting. I want to look at number 6. Any committee, and I'm hoping this is going to address the issue or the question over here that was subcommittees. Any committee or subcommittee appointed by a public body or an association described in subsection 2 for the purpose of conducting business that is within the jurisdiction of the agency that is subject to the requirements of this section. What it's saying is, if you're going to appoint a subdivision of your body as a subcommittee to deliberate on something on your behalf, they too must comply with all these rules. So they too must meet these obligations for a legal meeting. So oftentimes we'll say, well, we'll just get 2 of our members and a member of the public, and that's not a quorum, and so they can go out and do their thing. They've got a great history in Missoula. Supreme Court's weighed in on this. Thank you very much. Missoula and Billings been really good at helping forge the precedents in the state. Let's try this. And it's like, yeah, that didn't work. Or yes, it did work. Right? Yes, the court sided with us. So either way, it's been very instructive for the rest of the state. Bozeman a little bit of Great Falls, but it's been fun to watch. I was gonna say something on that. Oh, yeah, I don't know if you recall a while back, the school board got appointed a group of people to evaluate and study the closure of a school in the district. And they were having meetings that weren't noticed. And then they just rolled into a school board meeting saying, hey, this is what we decided. We're gonna close down that school. Now, how do you think the public took that? Not really well. They said, and they had this whole spreadsheet they went through and how they prioritize and rank things, and they had this whole thing, this whole presentation. Probably said, when did we have a chance to weigh in on that? And they sued, and they were found that no, that's a subcommittee. They were given a purpose to do a public. They had a public purpose. They were deliberating on a public issue. They need to be open, consistent with subsection 6. And so that was overturned, and they had to start the process all over in a public. It was a public process. So I don't know if that helps with that. Can we cross that one off? Any questions? I think it came from over here.
Question going back a little bit to the agendas.
Yep.
You have to take attendance at those.
Oh, yeah, that was a question here, wasn't it?
You have to collect.
It really comes in now. Okay. Let's look at the bottom of page 5.
Yeah.
Minutes for public inspection, appropriate minutes of all meetings required by 23203, which we just read about, what must be open, let's see, to be open, must be kept, and must be available for inspection by the public. Let's look at number 2. Minutes must include without limitation. Turn the page over. These are the things that must be included in your meeting minutes. Date, time, place of the meeting. A list of individual members of the public body who were in attendance. The public body who were in attendance. So the question about in and out. If we start the meeting and someone comes a little bit late, note it in the minutes. Start the meeting, we have 4 of the 5 are present, and then Sue showed up 5 minutes late, just note it in your minutes. Well, Bob left, 20 minutes in, note it in the minutes. And really what's important is if you have a 5-member board, 4 show up and someone leaves early, that's okay. You've got 3, someone else leaves early, now what happens? We go to the quorum, we're done. So if you break the quorum during the meeting.
Is that true? I mean, I thought one of the rules maybe so there's, once a quorum is established for the purpose of the meeting, the quorum is established.
Doesn't give that flexibility in the statute. Could be a legislature thing. And I just think on the principle of it too. So here's another thing to think about for vacancies. Vacancies versus absence. 5-member board, 2 people are vacant, 2 seats are vacant, people resign. Now we have 3 people and 1 person's not there, right? Can we still conduct business? Great question, right? So can you count someone who doesn't exist? So that's where in that case, if 2 people resign, they're vacant seats. Now our body is a body of 3, 1 person's gone. I gotta be careful with my fingers. Okay, 1 person's gone. Now it's back to like a county commissioner scenario. But if we have a 5-member board, 2 people are on vacation, and then 1 person's not there, now we don't have a quorum. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, another example, how they're breaking the quorum, we're trying to prevent them from taking action. So there's politics to be wrapped up into this as well, where there's important decisions that need to be made and certain people are absent. Yeah, so, all right. So date, time, place,
I have one question.
those that are in or out, go ahead.
quorum on a meeting, if a meeting starts without quorum and it's not making any decisions, not taking any action? Is that?
Yeah, then it's just a collection of citizens that are sitting around talking about a public topic. Then you can start doing things. And so the challenge, so usually we encourage, and I think it might say in here too, for city councils, that if they meet, there's not a quorum, then they break up. Or they also have the ability to go out and drag them out of the bar and bring them to the meeting. But that was kind of stuff written back in the teens and the 20s.
Before the lines of the committees.
Yeah.
City council committees.
Yeah. So the challenge with having discussions, in which you can have discussions, but it's not official. And then when you do get a quorum at the next meeting, then you gotta rehash it all over again. So it really, yeah, so
But if your quorum happens within that same meeting, and then you can start that point, they take action.
from that point on. So then it becomes an official meeting, and we're now in session, yeah.
That minutes would start.
Official minutes would start. There might be notes, and then there's official minutes.
Regard to posting the agenda, if you post your agenda and then there's a change.
Good question.
Yes, sir.
So the question, if you post the agenda, there's a change. So what are the rules about noticing the public? They need to be noticed when?
48 hours.
40 hours in advance. And so if something comes up, you need to decide, so we can't add something to the agenda that hasn't been noticed by 48 hours. Right, so that wouldn't work. You might be able to take something off, or you can table it during the meeting and say, okay, we're not gonna deal with this because for whatever reason, we table that. But adding something within the 48 hours, either you move the meeting back and renotice it, but you need to have that 48 hours. And so what you might say is, we're gonna cancel this meeting, we're gonna call a special meeting, and it's gonna be on next Tuesday instead of this Thursday. And notice it properly.
Couldn't it be new business?
Well, the problem is introducing something new that the public hasn't had an opportunity to notice for, so they can't come and participate. Your nonprofit board, you can. But not in a public board. Huh.
But having someone on your agenda to do a presentation is a no-show. And there's no communication, they just don't show.
Don't show. Yeah.
Then
Hey,
it's
keep
your-
on moving through the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah. So we got that. So minutes, we didn't finish. List of individual members, right? Individual members of the public body who are in attendance. The substance, that's the other thing, the substance of all things heard, discussed, and decided. Right? So it's reflecting of what creates the meeting, here, discuss, act. Minutes need to account for the substance, right? So that's the big question. And I think it was asked online, right, that they might want to write a novel. So here's the thing, there's what's called action minutes. And then there's verbatim minutes. Action minutes are one end of the extreme where it's just motion, action, motion, action, motion, action. Now, given what it says in the law, the substance of all things heard, discussed, and decided, do you think action minutes would be consistent with the expectation of the law? No. On the other end of the spectrum is verbatim minutes, which now with AI, you just hook this machine up and it can give you a whole interesting thing with minutes. It's the whole local government world is trying to figure out how AI can be used ethically within this system. But on the other extreme is the verbatim minutes, which is every word uttered in that meeting. So now it's a transcript. Is that the expectation?
No.
No. Yeah, you can do it if you want. It's not wrong, but really what we're looking for, the standard is the substance. So the way I think about this is if I were to read these minutes 10 years from now, would I know what happened, why it happened? What was the issue? What went into making that decision? So it might address, here are some of the concerns, here are things that are in support of the idea, and this is how the decision was made. So we're kind of helping the future you have a better understanding of what went into that decision. Having read a lot of minutes, there's been some that are just wonderful, but they're very informative, and it's not uncommon for a jurisdiction, a city or county or a special district, to go back and read minutes from 10 years ago. That's like, oh, that makes sense. Today, that was a super dumb idea. 10 years ago, what you knew then, it makes sense. And I understand why it makes sense, because I can get that sense, you know, I understand it from reading the minutes. Yes.
A weird crossover question. Say, I know a guy. Right?
Yeah.
But, you have a meeting where you need to add something to the agenda. It's within the 48 hours, but it's already been in a previous public meeting. So something the public's already seen, whether that's been discussed in that actual meeting or in a different public meeting for the same city organization. Any thoughts on that?
I'm a Melton suspenders guy. So I like to make sure I feel very comfortable about where I want to sit on that. So that I want to take away any opportunity for a question or any opportunity for the trust that I have with the public to be eroded. So I would prefer to have, if we're going to talk about it with any sort of substance, I want to make sure the public's allowed to, or the forum that we're going to be having this discussion. And that might, the nuancing part of that, I would certainly say if you're going to take final action on it, it better be on the agenda. And my preference would be anything we're going to talk about of substance, it should be on the agenda. And so, yeah, there's the things that come, so if somebody wants to drag that back, I was like, you know, it's on the agenda, the public has been informed, we're having this discussion, you know, so a good chair can manage that meeting that way.
So this particular case, the subject matter was all there on the agenda, and this was just more background information that happened in a previous meeting. But it wasn't added until that 48 hours
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
Probably not the best, it sounds like, but.
Yeah, yes, I would say it's not a best practice. Yeah, not a best practice. Okay, what else we have on our list there? Circuit recorders and resolutions. So there are certain, and usually in the law, it will say that this needs to be filed with the circuit recorder. Right, this resolution, so like your budget, some of you like the water district, fire district, some of those special districts, they need to sometimes file things with the clerk recorder, so it needs to be on the record of the county. Your budget needs to go there, through that process. I can't think of things off the top of my head. Planning boards, there are things, you know, that come out, but usually comes out of the city or county when they make final actions, then filed, you know, with the clerk recorder. I'm not sure if there's anything, if they have specific questions.
I just personally have your bylaws, for term limits. That was, to add term limits to the board since they did not have them previously.
And sometimes it's that relationship you have with the county. It's like, what do you want from us? And so some counties might say, hey, it would be really handy for us, since we're the maintain the records for the county. Well, for one, you need to give the county clerk recorder your minutes within 30 days after they're adopted. Okay. So, yeah, so that's one thing you have to file. And then there might be other things like your bylaws, they say, hey, would you like our bylaws? So they might appreciate having all the board's bylaws at hand as a record. So when questions are asked, they have it there, so have them reach out. So one of the things I think with the legislature, I think it was a good plan when they say, hey, look, in response, you know, if you live out in the county or even in the city, you might be a part of, I don't know, maybe a half dozen or more different jurisdictions or districts that are taxing authorities that are making decisions, providing specific services to you. That means there's 6 or 7 boards you've got to seek out. And then you're running around the county trying to find their meeting notices, they're trying to find their minutes, and it's a nightmare. And that's why they're saying, hey, look, let's put it all online, like your meeting notices. And why we want you, after 30 days after adoption of your meeting minutes, give them the clerk and recorder. So now I can just roll into the county courthouse and say, hey, I would like to see the minutes of this group, that group, you know, and they can say, here they all are. Right, so it makes it easier for the citizens, the people we're serving. Right, it's a little more, less convenient for you, but again, like I said, If you found something like, oh, I've got an idea, this will make it really convenient for us. It's like, if you think you broke through, it's probably not gonna be in your. So those are some of the strategies, right? So if you're thinking about where the legislature's head is on that, that's what they're hoping to do.
So if I go in quarters and save the minutes and I post it on our website also, that is fine.
I would think so.
So that's what I'm.
Yeah, and it's a public record, and so again, make it easy for the people to access it. Think about, it would be a lot quicker for you to be able to post it online than having 12 people come in your office asking for it. It's like, I'd just rather make it available to you than having to do records requests over and over and over. Here's another, go ahead.
I think the two other ways to judge whether you should or not is one, if it became an issue, it was on the front page of the paper, what would you like to say? And number two, if you're in court, wouldn't you rather have just assumed the worst case scenario and done it up front?
Yeah. Here's a quick story for you. It's a little town of 175 people over the mountains. Not on the side of the girl.
It's on the other side of the state.
There's a few. So we host this executive forum, so all the managers and mayors come together, once a year. We have kind of the training specific for them. And so this was after an election cycle, like now, we had a whole bunch of mayors that were elected. And so we do the introduction and say, tell us something that's really great and cool that's happening in your community. You're trying to keep, kind of cycling the energy. And this one guy said, yeah, I got elected, came into City Hall, there's all these boxes, all these dusty boxes, all this paper and crap. I spent 2 days to haul 5 pickup loads, all that crap down to the roll-off site, down to the dump, and it's so much better. But, oh, dude, you're going to jail. Put me in jail. So he just threw away. This is a little town that's probably established in 18 something. And he just threw away all their public records. Just heartbreaking.
What came of it? Did you hear anything afterwards?
What? I said, dude, those are all. Some things have to stay for perpetuity. Some things have a life cycle, a lifespan. So, and I'm sure that the perfect, this little tiny town, 170 people, they're like, I don't want to make decisions on who's going to put in the spot. But and it just takes a lot of energy to go through and sort out. But yeah. Whew. Okay, I want to point your attention to page 23. This is the section that deals with boards. So this is likely when the city council or the county commission is creating a new board to do something of a public purpose. This is the guidelines that they're following. There's a long section there. It takes like a page and a half, and that's really the formation and creation. So if any of this, page and a half. If any of you are concerned about liability, do I have a personal liability tied to my service to this public? The answer is, it depends. If you are following the course and scope of your board, and you're consistent with the authority that you have, and acting consistent with the authority you have as that board, and you're sued, the law says that that board has an obligation to defend you for doing your job. Now, flip that around. If you're behaving or acting inconsistent with that course and scope, outside of the bounds of your authority, and you're sued, then the law says that the board or that jurisdiction cannot defend you. Now you're on your own to defend yourself in that claim that's against the board. So it's really important to know, where's the line? Am I inside the lines of my authority when we take this action? Listen to your attorney, right? That's part of that. If you want to think about that judicial side, right? Ask and seek out that legal counsel. Say, are we in the right here? Do we have the authority to do this? Because that attorney is going to be the one that's going to defend you. They say, yeah, you have the authority. Here's the statute. Here's my opinion. I'm going to back you up. I'm going to go to court. They might find out that you didn't, and that's part of that judicial branch, right? Sometimes we're on the cusp. But so that's kind of the story about liability. Now, if you're wondering, well, what is our lane? What is our course and scope? There was a resolution at some point that was adopted by the governing body, whether it's the county if you're a county board or the city if you're a city board. They passed a resolution that went through this page and a half and decided we're going to create the elections committee, and this is what you're going to do, and here's your authority and responsibilities and duties, and that's going to be spelled out in that resolution. That's your marching order. And you gotta stay within that space. So if you don't know what that is, I would clerk recorder's office and say, can I please see the enabling legislation that created our board? So we know, particularly if you feel like you're tickling the edges of your authority. And I go back and say, hey, should we be doing this? What is our resolution that created this thing? And that resolution is created based on this structure that you'll see here in that statute. So that 71201. The other thing I want to point out, and I think it's one of our things on the board there. 73204, board minutes and administrative board district commission created under 71201. Blah, 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 shall submit minutes, I'm talking at the top of page 25. Shall submit the minutes of the proceedings within 30 days, the minutes having been approved by the body for electronic storage and retention in accordance with blah, 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 blah. So that's the law. It's not just the clerk and recorder's office saying, hey, we'd really like it if you would. No, it's not a suggestion. The law says thou shalt submit your minutes 30 days after approval to the clerk and recorder's office for electronic storage and retention. Drop down to 206, 71206, bottom page, the middle of page 205, or 25. This is the new part that was added in 2023. Representative Guest out of Cascade. There are some things happening in his district and a lot of frustration and a lot of constituents coming to see him saying, look, we're frustrated. Our board is blocking us out or not noticing our meetings or not making minutes available. They're just bad actors. It's a bad group of people. And we are having a hard time holding them accountable. Options are, if they're elected, we can recall them, but there's specific criteria to recall them. It's a high bar. And I'll tell you this, it's easier to get elected than it is to get recalled. You can lie to get elected, but you got to prove a lie to get recalled. So it's hard. It may be for good reason, right? Because we want to have some insulation around that legislative discretion that we're giving them. Where is it going with this? Okay, so there's some frustration. So we worked with them to create this statute that says if 5% of the people within that jurisdiction sign a petition claiming some sort of bad act or not noticing their meetings, or not making information available, like the minutes aren't being available, they're making decisions without a quorum. But whatever those things are, here's our petition, here's the bad actors, the bad activity. Then it goes to the county attorney, who then reviews the claim or the petition for merit. Is this accurate or not? We don't want it to be just kind of witch hunting. We want it to make sure that, yeah, these people are not following the law. The county attorney reviews it, says that is correct. This petition has merit. Then it's kicked over to our shop at the local government center, Montana State University, where we are then responsible for going into that board and providing training. But the assumption is that they're I'm trying to think, I don't want to use the word ignorant. Uninformed, thank you. Whew. I need a thesaurus, my thesaurus here. So they're uninformed, right? They have good intentions, but they just don't know what they're doing. So we come in and help them get kind of lined up. If they continue behaving this, so 2023, this is the statute. We come in, provide training. 2025, first session. 2025, I don't know if you remember this. I think it was, they called what's in there now the carrot. Happened in 2023. Stick. Now we got to stick. Get on 2025. Now it says, now if you continue to be a bad actor, and I can't remember if the law says that they have to do a petition again, but what it does is it gets kicked over to the county commissioners, who then now provides in the law a pathway for removal. So it says that with a writ of mandamus to the district court to have them removed from office. They've always technically had the ability to do that, but it hasn't been spelled out for the county commission to act in that way. So they've been very hesitant to step in and say, particularly like a fire board or a water board or some other elected board. I don't want to step in there. What authority do I have? They're elected by the people. They should be accountable to the people. Right? And so what we're doing is we're saying, okay, we're going through a very specific process that we're allowing the county commission, after lots of layers of intervention, to now step in and say, okay, we're gonna get rid of you. Now, what I'm finding, and I applaud the effort, and and we've already we've been called in already. We had a district that had 12 petitions. 11 were found to have merit. But by the time all this plays out, what happened is the bad actors got voted out, drummed out, recalled, resigned. So I have faith in the system that it course corrected. It just takes time, right? Local government doesn't operate in spikes. It operates in long hills, right? It's a long arc of correction. So this, in a way, is I'm starting to realize that, oh, this is kind of a frustration that there's always been a remedy for this. It usually corrects itself. And so here's the thing. I come rolling in. By the time I get called in and come rolling in to fix the problem, they're already gone. And we have a brand new board who is, but honestly, they were eager. Please tell us what to do. We know what bad looks like. Help us, give us a vision of what good looks like. So in that respect, it's all great, it's all good. But I know there are some that are perennial bad actors, and it attracts bad actors. And it's just been a long history of bad acting, creating lots of frustration. Again, it's like, why do we keep electing these folks? I don't get it. But okay. Elected officials and staff. Let me just talk briefly about this relationship here. Some of your boards have no executive. You are the legislative body. Fire boards, water districts, you have this part. The board is the legislative body. The chief or the district manager is the executive. So big picture, what is the responsibility of the legislative branch? What is their purpose? What's their duty? To pass laws, ordinance, resolutions. They're the legislative. They create the laws that govern the board. What's the role and responsibility of the executive branch? Implement and execute. So when it comes to managing staff, does the board is the legislator managing FWP? No, last thing you want to do is manage FWP, right? You pass the framework and the structure for how FWP is organized and their duties and responsibilities, and then it's the governor's responsibility, given what the legislature's passed, to manage that organization. Right? And if there's something that's like, well, that's not working, take it back to legislature. We need to clarify the law, right? Because maybe we didn't anticipate that. Well, let's fix that and we'll pass another law, right? So that's that relationship. It's slow, it's cumbersome, but it works really well. So boards shouldn't be getting involved in HR issues. Boards should be passing HR policies. And then the chief is responsible for executing that HR policy. Right? So you say, these are the standards we have for bringing in our water operator. This is the criteria. And then now the district manager is going to then put out the advertisement, hire someone, manage the person based on your HR policy. Right? What doesn't work, and this is where you get outside your course and scope, I'm outside of my lane when, as a legislative body, we're doing operations. Then you get sued, then you have to hire your own attorney to defend yourself. These folks shouldn't be terminating people except for the chief or the district manager, because that's your employee. The chief then is responsible for hiring or managing all the volunteers or the staff or whatever there might be in that organization. Is this making sense? So they should, this is the same, the city council's not deciding who the mayor is hiring. It does say the department heads, I think, have to be consented by the council. So in that respect, just like the governor appoints the department heads with the consent of the Senate, the president appoints the cabinet with the consent of the Senate. The mayor appoints the department heads with the consent of the city council. Right? So, and it might be, and I can't remember with like fire district, I think it's just you hire the fire chief, here's the policies. Right? So you're on that budget side, adopting policies, not in the operations. Does that help? Some of you might be aboard with no staff. we just kind of meet, you might have a staff assigned that make sure the minutes are taken care of, make sure both meetings are noticed, helping with preparing the agenda, they do the administrative stuff, but they're not really staff that you direct. They're employees of the city or the county that support you, and then you're just a legislative body. Fire or fair boards, you got a fair board manager, that's the person you're, and sometimes the county has set up what that relationship looks like. Sometimes some counties, the fair board manager is hired by the fair board. Manage that person. Sometimes it's an employee of the county commission. They hire them, manage them, and the fair board is the advisor. So it comes down to what does it say in that 71201, right? What does that enabling legislation say? What are our authorities? What's our relationship with the governing body? That's the way we travel. And I'll tell you this, if you see one county or one city, you see one city, one county. They're all different, none of them are the same. And it's the same with boards, right? Their relationship with one board might be different than the relationship with a different board. And it's all comes down to what that resolution that they've created that establishes that board. Community councils. There is an ordinance that creates community councils. From what I understand, it's been a while since I've had to deal with this question, but they're advisory to the county commission. So you're there, really what your role is to bring and convene the community around some of these issues. And I think having a good working relationship with the county and saying, what are some of the issues that we can facilitate conversations in our community? And likewise, here are some issues that we're facing, we're gonna bring to you. But I think having good communication between you and the county commission as to how and what the issues are, and then how to best address those, and how that input to them might be best appreciated.
We get an innocent question. But I'm looking at a city, Missoula City, who has a city council, who has a mayor with elected city council members who represent individual district or wards, right? Okay. We have 3 county commissioners elected, paid, and then you have these community advisory councils, but they don't operate like a ward. We literally have no power. There's no power. Only the 3 commissioners have power. What is the thinking behind that? When your city has these people all being represented by a vote.
Yep.
But your members of your county don't have that kind of influence. What is the logic behind that? It has to be good logic behind
Yeah.
that.
Incorporate.
Okay,
It's
so
not the city.
can you speak to that a little, just a tiny, like 3 minutes?
Possible.
Okay, so do my homework?
No, so incorporation, I know Sealy Swan's been talking about it, not Sealy, Swan and Condon has talked about it a little bit, that they don't meet the criteria. Big Sky's been fussing over this for 15 years. That was one of the first things I dealt with when I first came on this job 18 years ago, was I went to Big Sky to talk about incorporation. They should have done it 50 years ago. Anyway, so part of that is incorporation. There's criteria you need to follow in order to incorporate. You have to have a density
You know, there's
of people.
limitations and problems with that as well.
Yeah, but part of it, yeah, so you're still, everybody. You pay county tax.
Right,
Those that live in a municipality pay municipal tax,
right,
but you're getting municipal services.
for sure.
And if you're living out here in the county, you're paying county taxes, you're getting county services.
Yep.
And so that's some of the things, so where someone was like, yeah, I don't want, having that additional tax for the municipal side and what I feel like I'm getting out of it for the services isn't worth it.
Got it.
Until that tips over. And part of it is, do we have the number of people in the density
Yeah.
that's required? And then you can say, okay, we meet that criteria now, do we want to do this or not?
And then we could totally do our research on this to find what is that tipping point typically historically.
I don't think there's a community that's incorporated in Montana in 30 years or so. It's been a
Yes,
while.
it's Holstrip.
That's Colstrip. So
1986, with Holstrip's incorporation. But it's been a lot of, we had a recent conversation with Park City.
Yeah.
A few years back, we had a conversation with Lincoln.
Yeah.
More recently, it was Condon and Swan Valley, the density criteria, Gardner. So those are places where it might make sense for them to say, hey, look, there's certain things, and part of it's representation. Think about Big Sky. You know, they have, again, think if they want to represent themselves at the legislature like, town saying, there's 6,000 of you.
Have all the money in the world.
You have all the money in the world, which,
No,
that's a whole,
that's.
yeah, they'll say, well,
Yeah.
but anyway, so that's, part of, for them is we have no representation. No one has legitimate voice to go to the legislature speaking on our behalf. That you get that from having an elected body. I am the mayor. We've had this discussion. We've passed the resolution through this public process. Now I can go to the legislature and speak on behalf of my people that live within this.
So basically where I'm going with this is, let's just say we don't qualify for that. It doesn't make financial sense to do that. Then to go back to your original point, you're saying just continue to foster relationship and keep the dialogue open
Yeah.
and have even equal amount of influence just by.
Those, I'll say this, I'm not over committee in the commission, but my guess is if you're performing well, high functioning as a community council.
Yeah.
And you're coming to them with a valid, legitimate process behind you saying you want this, my guess is they'll more likely
So
support
far,
that.
so good, 100%. Yeah.
I think your commission, more than any other commission in the state, starts at yes.
So that's interesting.
Most other counties, the default is no. And you're in a county where they start with yes. And until they can't do it, you know, but they will try to make it work.
That's been my
Given,
experience.
yeah.
It seems like to me, if those councils are interested in this, would regularly attend either virtually or in person when the county commissioners are meeting.
Yeah.
So you have a relationship before the issue
Right.
comes up.
Agreed.
That's something that would be awesome after.
Yeah, we did, we just did a right.
So that might always be an option if you're interested. Now, we started it just this past year with community councils to see how it worked and how, like, it was great. It was just recently.
Yeah.
Right, so,
Host a community tour.
yeah,
Get them all in the car.
we make sure that you're there for like public meetings or administrative meetings, like, and I think sheriff meetings and a bunch of wide variety, what we try to do.
Have we covered the no agenda items?
No.
Yes, no.
Yeah.
What, is there anything you want to talk about on that?
Non-agenda,
Non-agenda items.
that's what it was.
Is that what,
Questions on non-agenda items.
say it again?
Questions on non-agenda
Oh.
items and how they're answered or not in a meeting. Should they be?
If somebody asks a question about something that's not on the agenda, do you answer it in the meeting?
Yes, I think if it's a direct answer, it's not something we've got to think about it. We're gonna create something from it, but it's like, here's, you know, yes, I think you can, if you choose, you can respond to those questions, yeah. And I don't want to say you can't during public comment respond to questions, but oftentimes it's difficult and things get away from you. And so it's easier to think about how do we want to manage that interaction with the public, is establish those expectations and standards in your bylaws and then operate that way. And that's where we like to say, look, you can come, we're open from, I don't know, 10 to noon, Monday through Friday, whatever it is. Come, that's when we want to have, we can answer your questions. This isn't a forum for answering questions, it's a forum to get your public input on decisions we're making. Go ahead.
My experience in school board settings is when you open that Pandora's box and you start having a conversation about, she brought up something about the food in the cafeteria that's not on the agenda, you step into the weeds. And so my districts have always, thank you for comments.
Thank you for your comments.
That's it.
And it can also get,
They can say you can come and visit with the superintendent, you know, whatever.
you can get sucked into this privacy thing too, pretty easy.
Yeah.
Start talking about a teacher. Like, whoa, okay, hey, that's an administrative thing. It's not a board issue. We have an administrator that needs to deal with that. So this is not the forum to have that conversation. Yes. All right, we'll wrap up. I think the last thing is on privacy, right? Where's So let's go back to page 5. We'll wrap this bad boy up. So 23203, let's drop down to number 3. And this is how we're balancing these two constitutional rights. The presiding officer of any meeting may close the meeting during the time of the discussion, underline that, during the time of discussion relates to a matter of individual privacy, and then if and only if the presiding officer determines that the demand of individual privacy clearly exceeds the merits of public disclosure, or demand of individual privacy, yeah. So you can close the meeting after the chair, the presiding officer determines that the demand of individual privacy exceeds the public's right to know. We're putting in a balance, there's a greater expectation of privacy for that individual than the public's right to know. That's not an absolute. Not an absolute. Every privacy issue is not necessarily something that's excluded from the public's observation. Now, if I am a janitor at the police department, I may have a greater expectation of privacy when dealing with a personnel issue than a police officer. Why would I say that? Why would a police officer have less of an expectation of privacy than a janitor? Yeah, their role in society is different than the janitor. We have placed a tremendous amount of trust in their judgment as a police officer. Hey, police officer, I still gotta get out of town. We put a tremendous amount of trust in them to use and exercise judgment up until the point of violating someone's individual rights, up until the point of death. It's an awesome responsibility of them having to use their judgment to make decisions. So we put they have less of an expectation of privacy than someone who's the janitor. Less public trust placed in them, way more. I would imagine same with teachers. I don't want a world I don't deal with much, but police officers deal with a lot more. I'll give you examples. We'll pick on Billings because there's so much fun. So Billings, they had their IT department, of course, located in the basement of the building. And so in the basement, what are 3 dudes playing on computers all day? What do they end up looking at? Porn. Well, so the city administration and leadership finds this out, and they have a policy against this. They apply the policy, they discipline these individuals. But apparently Billings has this huge leak. It's leaked out to the Gazette all the time. So anything that's going on inside these institutions is leaked to the press. So the press gets the wind of, oh, these guys, well, we want to know who they are. They come trooping down the city. We want to know who these individuals are that work for the city's IT department that were violating the policy. They said, you know, we're not going to provide that for you. Well, we're going to sue you. Sue us. Go went to the court. The court said, no, those individuals, because of their public trust, level of public trust they have an expectation of privacy, and you don't need to release that. Now, they could personally release it themselves if they wanted to, but the city had an obligation to protect their privacy. Now, remember, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 years ago, there was a woman that was working for the Billings PD. She ended up stealing things from the evidence locker, like drugs, and was overall not a good person in that position of trust. It was found out, she was disciplined, and through that investigation of her behavior, in that investigation, they found that she was also having inappropriate relations with police officers while on duty on city property. That got leaked out. Now, of course, those officers, there's a policy against that, and then the city administered the policy and disciplined those officers appropriately. But now the press is wanting to know who are these officers, rightly so. That behavior demonstrates that you're not exercising good judgment. And now you're going to come out here on the streets, and we're expecting you to exercise good judgment when it comes to these very high pressure situations that may involve. Okay. So the city, not sure where the balance is, and joined with the Gazette, went to the district court and said to the judge, what say you? The judge has judicial immunity. Whatever the judge decides is what decides. If the city had made the decision and it was the wrong decision, then there could be punitive damages to that. So they both went and said, you tell us. So what did the judge say? Release the names. So Monday, the judge said, release the names. The city says on Thursday, we're gonna release the names, and the police officers called a press conference on Wednesday and out of themselves. Said it was us. We apologized, it's well scripted, and they said all the right things, and, so that's an example. So my point in saying that, not is to keep dragging these poor officers in the mud, because stop talking about that. But it's to highlight that it's not a cut and dry, that you need to seek legal counsel, because there is probably these 5 pages that we've been looking at. If you were to add the Attorney General opinions, just a couple of sentences, where am I at? A couple of sentences describing an AG opinion, and a couple of sentences describing a Supreme Court case note on an issue that relates to these statutes, there's 32 additional pages of precedents that takes these words and helps us understand them better. There's a whole lot of clarification. So just by reading these words isn't going to be enough. That's why you seek legal counsel, that they can help you say, oh yeah, there's a case here, or there's an AG opinion, and they can figure out where. And I'll tell you this, there's not a lot of wiggle room left in the law, in lack of clarity. After 50, 60 years, since 1972, we pretty much know where the line is. And if you're screwing up on an open meeting or citizen participation issue, it's probably not because we don't know. There's not a lot of ground left to plow. It's all been plowed, it's all been planted, we know what's going on. So that's where it comes down, it's like, you're just being a pain in the rear. So knowing that, seek competent legal counsel. The other point I want to make here is it says, a couple more things. The presiding officer determines. What bothers me is I travel around the state, not yet in my spirit, but it's coming. I will see a city council, I'll see the mayor say, all right, we need to close the meeting. I'll entertain a motion from the council to close the meeting and go into executive session. Why does that cause me heartburn? Yeah, the presiding officer makes that determination. What you're doing is you're asking the legislative body to take action on something they don't have the authority to do. What if they say, no, we want the meeting open, when your legal counsel says it should be closed to protect the right to privacy, and now you're stuck. Am I going to not follow through on what the order I asked you to take, the decision I asked you to make? You can say, look, well, you didn't go the way I was hoping you would go on that issue, so I'm going to ignore what you said, and we're going to close it anyway. So my point is, don't ask them. It is your call as the chair. Don't ask them something they don't have the authority to answer.
I think that's in 2-3-2, meeting to find that last sentence over which the agency has supervision. Jurisdiction. Do you even have jurisdiction here? And sometimes you don't, you just want to say something or do something, but it's not your job.
And yes, and so it's a big deal when you close the meeting. And I would imagine, other than probably fire, if you're, maybe at least once a year when you're evaluating the fire district, the chief of the fire chief. Same with, or something comes up, right, that you may have to close the meeting to protect. Here's the thing, which the courts have identified these 5 or 6 things that are considered private. IQ tests, medical records, family issues, drug and alcohol issues, personnel records, military records. Those are things that they say would be considered private. So outside of that, if you think, well, we had one mayor close a meeting to discuss the report from the tree board on the health of the urban forest. He said, because our urban forest is so bad, we're likely going to get sued. So we're going to close the meeting to talk about this. I said, no, that's not a thing. They know how bad it is because all those trees are in their front yard. It's on the boulevard. They know how bad they are. You're not hiding anything. Anyway, so privacy issue is one that you can close a meeting and discuss someone's issue of privacy. So it might be your policy that you say, look, you can use your vacation or your sick leave, for a medical issue, and then it's leave without pay. We can do leave without pay for 30 days, but after that, it needs council approval or board approval, right? So then after the 30 days, someone says, I need board approval. Well, I don't want to come to open meeting and say, look, I'm getting treated for cancer. It's none of the public's business. So that would be a time where you close the meeting to say, I'm seeking approval from the council. I wouldn't even put that as a policy, but I'm just saying that that could be a reason why you might want to do that for personnel issue. We had worked with a mayor who was the mayor for 28 years. He said, Dan, I have never once flipped a meeting. I've always been able to manage the issues without having to close the meeting, without having to engage the inappropriately the council on issues that they didn't need to deal with. The other issue that closed the meeting is 4A, except as provided in subsection A, B, or 4B. A meeting may be closed to discuss strategy to be followed when with respect to litigation, when an open meeting would be detrimental to the effective litigating position of the public agency. So if you're in a lawsuit, you can close the meeting to discuss litigation strategy. That has yet to be challenged in court. So it's out there, we do it, but no one's pushed back on that. So it hasn't been ratified by the courts. So we're doing it, and we've been doing it for a long time. It used to say that you could close a meeting to discuss union collective bargaining. And they got challenged on that, and the court said, no, you can't do that. And so that was taken out of the law. So it used to be that you can close the meeting for privacy, litigation, and collective bargaining. And they got challenged in the court. The court said, determined the legality in that. They said, nope, so it's now out. So it's still fluid. Some of those things haven't yet been challenged. But we could, like, the law now says the county commissioners can travel in a vehicle. And as long as they notice that we're traveling in a vehicle, and then when they get to the next meeting, say, this is what we talked about in the meeting. But the law says they can until they get challenged, and the court says you can't.
And so if you have an issue like that too, and you need legislation, talk to your legislator.
Yes.
They
Yes.
say it.
I was just getting back to my grandstanding piece.
Yes.
So, not closing the meeting, but presiding officer can step in and close off public comment. To keep it from snowballing into, is that true or no?
Well,
And say, you'll have to submit your comments in writing and close your public comment.
yeah, so this,
Gray area, but I-
yes, this is where the legislature might do things differently, and they have the rationale to do things, but typically in our world, and it might be when you're dealing with things on a federal level, but when we're operating on that local level.
So we never did that, of course, it just,
Right.
no, but I,
Great.
I've seen a lot of non-federal public meetings where people start snowballing on top of each other and then ceding their time to somebody else. and-
That we can fix.
Yeah,
So put in your bylaws, right, because this, make your rules. You can, I yield my time to the good sister, yeah, that we're not doing that, right? So put that in your bylaws. So be clear about your expectations. Here's another thing I'll just briefly talk about. Is that right, let's say briefly? The Ninth Circuit Court, under our jurisdiction, has declared that our public meetings are a limited public forum. There are 4 different public things that happen. If you want to have free total expression, there was a bunch of guys that were hanging out on an overpass on my drive here today. That whole overpass was covered in American flags, and they were jumping around doing their thing. They were having some sort of a thing. They have every right to do that in that public space. A lot of leeway about expression. And then it narrows down and narrows down, right? Schools, prisons, public prison, but we're not allowed to just start walking through, right? So there are certain things that we've identified. So they have said, the Ninth Circuit Court said that your meetings are a limited public forum, which means they even have language you can use, which means you can limit the type of speech and the length of speech and the quality of speech, right? You can, so if good bylaws that are appropriate, it's not what you're saying. It's how you're saying it. We're not going to allow you to stand on a chair and swing a sword while you're making your public comment. We're not going to allow that. But if you want to respectfully, so come and say, this is what I'm going to be excited about it, but profane language, they say you can limit that. some jurisdictions, right, that's Ninth Circuit Court. Other circuit courts haven't done that, but we can do that. They've even like, so one, they've given us language we can use in our bylaws that would help us establish that expectation. It's not what you're saying, but it's how you're saying it, we can limit, and the amount of time that we can limit. So they've given us that flexibility. We will say from our shop, don't limit public comment to less than 3 minutes. 5 minutes is better, 7 minutes is great, but if you go less than 3 minutes, what we're concerned is that now you're cutting into my ability to engage and redress my government, which I have a constitutional right to do. We don't want to push into that, because what we don't want to have is this branch of government to say, oh, in reading sections 8, 7, 8, and 9, or 8, 9, and 10, we don't think you can limit the amount of time. We don't want to have them have to debate that issue right now, since it doesn't say one way or the other, where we're limiting the amount of time someone could comment. No less than 3 minutes, because we don't want to push it, because we don't want to, we're afraid of what the answer will be. That makes sense.
The reason I throw this out here is because in my career in federal government, I went from having public meetings that were on the verge of not being safe.
Yes.
Having law. And I think in our national environment right now, people start stonewalling these things, start building off each other. I think it's a safety.
So, yes, what you could do is just say, this has gone a little out of control. You can either move to recess, if you feel like you can take the temperature down, or adjourn. Sometimes people will get up there for the very intent to have you end the meeting. And I'm less willing to get into that. I'd much rather say, we're gonna take a 5-minute break. And don't all get up and go in the back room. Because of course, like this old, and maybe someone can go over and talk to the person who's creating the problem. City of Great Falls is gonna say $500,000, have they dealt with that public comment differently than they did? And had a comment before they took final action, they would have saved the taxpayers $500 million. But yeah, I think you're right. So be thoughtful as a chair. But I would suggest use the recess first, adjourn second. Those are your nuclear options, if you will. And then have good, thoughtful bylaws. Explain those bylaws or rules ahead of time. And then hold them to that. And what we'll find in our experience, when you have those written out and it's like on the back of the agenda, and people start behaving inappropriately during that meeting, what we find is some of the public members will help out and say, hey, Larry, sit down. You're breaking number 3. So get some rule followers in society, right? They're still, now you're right? Now you're gonna make sure, so sometimes they can help police that. So, but yes, if it's feeling unsafe in light of what happened yesterday, these can become real concerns. So I think be thoughtful on that. And if you are anticipating something that might get, I'll tell you, I helped facilitate a meeting for the Forest Service. And we said, okay, we're gonna meet here, we had to see, LEO showed up, the law enforcement officer showed up. They had a whole plan for extricating the Forest Service, the supervisor and all had a wonderful plan. But they looked at me and said, you're on your own. They expected 20 people showing up, 240 showed up, and a third of them were drunk.
Yep.
We got through it. But those guys were all in plain clothes, the LEOs were all plain clothes, and they were sitting around and they were ready to, they had idling vehicles out the back door. And it felt so good being on my own. Jeez. So it all worked out. That was a great night. And all the guys who were drunk were on the front row too. So like, I'm watching you. You were in my eye. I think that's, and I think a well thought out, well managed, and good bylaws that give you the authority to act in specific ways, I think would help. The other thing I was going to say is the Ninth Circuit Court also gave us language or expectations, the other things between the board. What are our ground rules? How are we going to treat each other? And so we established that, and that level of civility and respect that we established by saying, this is how we're going to roll as a board. and then say, this is how our board's gonna engage with all of you. All right, so I think the clearer we are in that, those expectations. And then having kind of these, pressure valves that you can pull on when you need.
It's smart, it's smart, if you just build those into your bylaws. What you do.
Yeah, and I work with your legal counsel to make sure that you're not. So this is why like Missoula or Helena or Bozeman, they might have meetings go till 3 a.m. Right, because that's how we roll on the local level, the legislature does different things, but we'll continue to take public comment. Until everyone's done taking public comment. They might extend the meeting, so we're gonna recess the meeting, or anyway, we'll pick it back up again. In another time, just because it's 2 o'clock in the morning, we're like super tired, afraid. Yeah, so you do some of that, but part of that is. Yeah, we're allowing everybody to have that opportunity to speak at this level.
I really hope that isn't the case, that it goes that late for governing.
For you guys,
I
hope
agree. It really, yeah.
it might be for water, sewer, some of it, or the fire, maybe those guys, maybe a community council on occasion.
Say too, especially in this climate, we do need is the opportunity for more people to engage and release. And you use the word almost like pressure valve.
Yeah.
And if I've been to meetings where the time limit feels very constraining and frustrating, even for someone who's not gonna fly off the handle and use more time. And the other piece about please don't repeat things we've already heard, I also push back a little bit against that, because I'm like, yes, but if I'm hearing the same concern from multiple people, at least me as a representative, I start to take notes.
As a chair, which you can say, I've heard this comment 4 times, who all else shares this?
There you go, I love that.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
If I address that comment or that issue
Yeah.
in our plan, whether there's 1 person or 500 people, it's addressed. So hearing it 500 more times doesn't make it. So part of it is the public comment's not necessarily a vote, but that's one way to say, it. Who else shares that? Well, great, we've taken note of that. Write it down, say, okay, and then when you're doing your oral reasons for your vote, make sure you're addressing them, legitimizing it. And sometimes those things, when there's 500 or 50 people in the room that share the same idea, it may or may not be an accurate idea.
For sure. Right, because everybody's.
But we did, you were heard. We
Yes.
said validate that. I hear you.
That's a good.
Right, what else do we have to say? Because that is written down.
Duly noted, got it.
Duly noted.
Yeah.
What else you got? Because I want to hear it all. But I don't want to hear it 16 times.
That's a helpful phrase.
The other thought.
Okay, it'll come out.
Yeah. Not enough Diet Coke in my life.
Stop.
There's something about. Take the time.
Something about chickens, wasn't it? Something about chickens.
Chickens, we talk, oh, give me a round about chickens. Yeah. Okay, whatever.
Having been in situations where people threaten to kill me or other elected officials, I just think it's wise if you've got a meeting that might get really hot, have a pre-conversation with your law enforcement about whether they should be there or whether you want them on speed dial because they know something could happen, but plan ahead for that.
This is I've spent way more time. I've spent way more time talking about it. Here's one of the issues we found. Cops know what disorderly conduct looks like at 2 a.m. in a bar.
Yep.
But in a meeting room like this, lights on, what does disorderly conduct look like?
Right.
So what we've encouraged for city councils that have had some very contentious meetings and really during the pandemic, health boards.
Yeah.
So we've had them, we've encouraged for the mayor, chief of police, and the city attorney to talk about. So the mayor's talking, this is how the meeting's gonna roll, here's what we think are the hot spots. And there is statute about disturbing the peace or trespass or whatever it is. It's a work of the city attorney to say, or the county attorney, what does this look like in this context? And what's gonna be the trigger? The last thing you wanna do as a board chair, the last thing we wanna do as a board chair is say, deputy, arrest that person. And they're gonna say, screw you, because they have not violated law, and you can't tell me what to do. I'm here using my judgment and discretion to determine when you stepped over the line. So having that conversation where the attorney who's gonna have to prosecute that crime and the police chief or officers that are gonna have to enforce that are in sync about what this looks like. This is what it looks like. So when that behavior steps over the line, we will act because it's a safety issue, but I think it's having that conversation ahead of time is critical. Because then then the expectations are such, because then you can start looking at the deputy saying, dude. Right, and then, they can either accept it or not, but they're still the ones that have to use that judgment. Because they're at the right to report, that then has to go to the attorney, that then has to go to the judge and say, this is the behavior that violated the law. And you want to dial that all in. And the last thing you want to have is someone drug out by the hair. It's just not good.
Treasure wanting to protect certain people speaking.
Yes.
That's what I'm.
And I draw this up, and I didn't do it with you guys.
Public speech.
I mentioned earlier, this is you, the fulcrum, as you're trying to balance all this in your community, right? The right to know, the right to privacy, the right to participate, speak versus, it's like, look, you're taking up too much time. You're not creating a safe space. People don't feel safe to say something else. And really what we want is the best out of our community. I want to have a dialogue about this issue. I need to hear all sides of it in order for me to make a good decision on your behalf. And you are making it unsafe for other people to share and express their views. And that compromises our ability to make a good decision on behalf of the community. And if you can help have that reasonable conversation, expectation, part of it's a culture that you create in your community. You create that culture of extending the hand, asking, wanting, encouraging, and then it's less likely to build up the steam to where it blows up in a meeting. That you're having those listening sessions ahead of time, you're just using it, and there's very few things that have to happen right now. So take advantage of that deliberative process, be thoughtful about how we bring the community along. Here's the other thing I'll tell you. You can imagine I was a pretty active mayor. I got a lot of crap done, right? When they talk about kicking the can down the road, I walk into City Hall after I was sworn in, it's like, holy heck, there's a lot of cans in the ground in here. So I started picking up all these cans that kicked down the road forever, right? So I was doing more in the first 2 years of my tenure as mayor that had been done in the city for decades. And the council was right in step with me. They said, we're loving it, Dan, we love you, we love all this stuff, this has to happen. However, the public is not used to this space. We're hearing it. I'm getting pushback. My business is getting overrun. This is the feedback I'm getting. You're doing it good. You're doing it right. It has to happen. But we've got to bring them along, which forced me, it was a learning curve for me, forced me to say, okay, what do we do now to engage them? It's not going to happen at the pace I wanted it to happen at, but I'd much rather have the choice of the decision be made that's durable. That if I bring the community along in making that decision, it's going to last and not be switch sawing back and forth. And if I do it too quick, people say, that didn't work for me. I'm going to elect you because you're going to unwind what he just did. And you're back into that, flip back and forth. I'd much rather say, let's come along. What is important to us? What are our values? What do we want this to look like? And it might take, we might have to, like all y'all here, we're gonna create another committee. We'll give you instructions. We want you to do this. We want you to bring people together, talk about it, and make recommendations back to us. Then we'll continue talking about it. Like, we want to bring more people in. And it might, the thing that says, oh, it's an easy answer. I know what the answer is. It'll take us 2 weeks to do it. Yes, but if we take 6 months, more durable, people on board, builds trust. They're more willing to be on board with us for the next decision as we go up that ladder of Maslow's hierarchy. We got to take care of water and sewer first before we can get to the parks. Right? You all might be concerned about that, but we got to deal with this first. Got to bring them along on that journey. So fun stuff. I'll tell you, I'll just not leave with this because I've got 2 minutes. If you're not having fun doing this, you're not doing it right. So if it's causing angst and anxiety, either in that transition, but it's fun stuff. This is exciting, engaging, impactful work that you're doing. I appreciate your public service. If not you in these seats, who? Well, maybe in Missoula, there's a lot of people in line. I don't know. But I really appreciate your dedication to public service. You're willing to take your time, your personal time, dedicated to making your community something that you want to live in. And that's what I think local government is about. This is the closest that government is to the people, and you are shaping your community. You're establishing the culture, and so just lean into the fact that I need more of you here. I need to hear what you have to say. I want to create a safe space for you to come with the best of your ideas, to make good decisions for me, my kids, my grandkids.
Thank you.
With that, travel. Travel.
Please, vote up on that as we go.
Detail box.